Good evening and welcome to the June 1st, 2026 meeting of the Prior Lake Planning Commission. I'd like to invite you all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Right now, we will move into tonight's agenda. I note that we have one public hearing, 2 items of old business, 1 item of new business, and then some announcements for staff and planning commissioners to talk just briefly about and to share with the wider viewing audience and those of you in the chamber. Right now, I'd like to suggest approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 3, approval of the May 18th Planning Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. Just a few comments before we move on with our public hearing. On behalf of my fellow commissioners and staff, I'd like to welcome everyone and review the public hearing procedure we will follow this evening. First, staff will present its report on the request or issue at hand, and planning commissioners will have an opportunity to pose questions or comments about that staff report. Next, the applicant, if there is one, will have an opportunity to address the commission, and commissioners can respond with questions or comments. Following the applicant's presentation, I will formally open the floor to public comment. If you wish to address the commission, I'd ask that you please approach the podium, press the red button to turn on the microphone, and then clearly state your name and address for the official record. So everyone will have a chance to speak. We ask that you limit your comments to 5 to 7 minutes in length, and that you make concise statements of fact pertaining to the specific item or application. This meeting is the official public hearing and your primary opportunity to be heard on this matter. The City Council has no obligation to accept further public comment, and in many cases, they do not. So please don't hesitate to speak. And with that, I will turn it over to staff for agenda item 4A. This is PDEV 26-00006-14091 Eagle Creek Avenue Northeast.
Thank you, Chair Fleming. Good evening, Commissioners. So the request before you this evening is from Pulte Homes of Minnesota, LLC. They are the applicant along with the property owner, Veerling Family Limited Partnership. There are 5 separate requests included in this agenda item that we'll go through each of them individually. A 2040 City of Prior Lake Future Land Use Map Amendment, an official zoning map amendment, an easement vacation, a preliminary planned unit development plan, and a preliminary plat for Marlow Ridge Second Edition. So each of these items will be involved in the public hearing this evening for a planning commission to make a recommendation to the City Council on a final decision related to all 5. The applicant is proposing a 262 unit low and medium and density residential subdivision on the subject property. The Commission and the public will probably recall that earlier in May, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and recommended approval of the Marlow Ridge plat. So the City Council will be considering that plat on June 9th. And as a reminder, that was just an outlot only plat. So that, if approved and recorded, will create Outlot A, which is approximately 22 acres on the north side of the property at the intersection of 21 and 42. That's guided for business office park. Will remain guided as business office park, and the owner is going to retain that property. The owner is also going to retain Outlot C, which is a 55-acre parcel on the southern end along the shore of Prior Lake. And the subject property that's highlighted, Outlot B, that is what is proposed for purchase and development for residential purposes by Pulte. So all of the applications on your agenda this evening only relate to Outlot B. There is no development proposal or applications for Outlots A or Outlot C at this time. So the first request is a future land use plan amendment. So the City of Prior Lake has a land use plan. It's adopted as part of our 2040 comprehensive plan. When we're getting into the 2050 comprehensive plan process, that land use plan will be looked at again. It is figure 3.2 in chapter 3, which is the land use chapter. So this plan guides future residential and commercial development of our community. All parcels have a land use plan guidance. If we are proposing any changes to that or development that isn't exactly fit within those parameters, we need to hold a public hearing to amend the plan. City Council needs to take action, and ultimately the Metropolitan Council needs to review and approve that request. So the subject property is highlighted. Currently there is about 20 acres of business office park. A large portion of that is covered by an existing wetland. There is 42 acres guided for low density residential and approximately 18 acres for medium. The applicant is proposing to amend the land use plan for low density residential on the east side of proposed Surrey Lane extension and medium density on the west. There would be a small amount of business office park on the north side of Fountain Hills because the land use guidance would go to the center line of the right-of-way. So Prior Lake values and places a high priority on conserving commercial industrial property. I have been here for many years and I can't recall when Prior Lake has rezoned commercial for residential purposes. In this case, staff does think it makes sense when you look at the site. So when we do the land use plan, it's colors on a map, but when you get down into the weeds and look at the site, the image on the right shows the topography as it exists today. So this property is covered by a 13-acre wetland, so it's not entirely buildable. There's probably around 10 acres of buildable property, but when you look at the elevations of 936 at the high point, and then 870 when you get to Fountain Hills, there is over 60 feet of fall on this site, which makes it extremely difficult for commercial development. Residential is still difficult, but a bit easier. In the grading plan that's proposed, I believe the developer, proposes to have about 30 feet of elevation change in this area, but for a commercial development to work, the pad needs to be relatively flat. The zoning map amendment, much like the comprehensive plan, the current zoning is shown on the middle of the screen, the image on the left, and the proposed zoning is on the right. So currently there is a mix of 4 different zoning districts in this property. R1, which is our low density residential, R3, which is our high density residential, C1 neighborhood commercial, and C3 business park. The applicant is proposing to amend our zoning use plan to match the guidance they're requesting in the comprehensive plan. So it would be R1, low density residential east of Surrey Lane, and R2, medium density residential west of Surrey Lane. City Code addresses amendments to the comprehensive plan, and the process is very similar to what is done for a conditional use permit. Planning Commission holds a public hearing, makes a recommendation to City Council. City Council approves an ordinance amending the zoning map. If the future land use plan amendments are approved, it would make sense. Staff would support the rezoning as well because the zoning map should match the land use guidance. The uses proposed, the R1 and the R2 use districts would be compatible with adjacent developments. There is low density residential to the south and east and a planned unit development residential density that is a mix of low and medium to the west across from County Road 21. The request includes an easement vacation request. So in 1995, the city received roadway drainage and utility easements via condemnation action along basically on the north side of Carriage Hills. Some of these easements were for construction purposes, others were permanent. The applicant is proposing to vacate these easements as they would be no longer necessary because their plat, if approved, would dedicate the necessary right-of-way and it would dedicate the necessary drainage and utility easements. These were just in place until future development. That process too involves holding a public hearing and reviewing these easements for conformance with the comprehensive plan. In this case, the comprehensive plan would require easements for sanitary sewer, storm, water, right-of-way. Those would all be dedicated on a final plat in the future if approved. The preliminary PUD plan, so this is the planned unit development plan that is proposed by the developer with medium density west of Surrey, low density east of Surrey. The site is 87.7 total acres. Of that, there is about 70 net acres that are developable when you net out the county right-of-way and the wetland areas. Again, they're proposing a 262 unit residential development, and then topography on the site is challenging. Again, 870 is the low point. The southeast corner of the site reaches about 958. There are 4 wetlands on the property, a large 13-acre wetland that everybody sees when they drive north or south on County Road 21, and then there's 3 others that total a half acre between the 3 of them. So the developer is proposing to impact just over 2 acres. About 1.5 acres of that impact is for the construction of Fountain Hills Drive to County Road 21. All of their wetland impacts will be reviewed and will comply with the Wetland Conservation Act requirements. In addition, the developer is working with the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District. I believe they'll touch on this a bit later, to bring the elevation of the wetland up and improve the quality of the wetland, which would allow for phosphorus treatments and different things before this water ultimately reaches Pike Lake and then drains north to the river. As a condition of approval of anything that gets to the City Council plat-wise, the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District does require a buffer easement be dedicated. So it's a conservation easement in favor of the watershed district so that there can be no impact whatsoever within the wetland setback area. Density for the overall PUD plan. The site, again, it's approximately 70 acres with 262 units proposed. That works out to be about a 3.75 unit per acre overall density. Our low density residential standards in our comprehensive plan are 2.5 acres on the low end. We can't go lower than 2.5, and then 3.9 on the high end. Medium density is 4 to 7.9 units per acre. In this example, as proposed, the low density residential area would be developed at a 2.65 unit per acre, which is very near the low end, and the medium density residential is proposed on, so 37 acres, 176 units, which is 4.7 units per acre. The setbacks proposed and requested by the developer are shown on the slide in front of you. So the standard front yard setback for an R1 or an R2 district is 25 feet. The developer is proposing 20 feet. A large part of that is because we worked with the developer previously on a development in the community where only 50 feet of right-of-way was obtained for the city's local street easement. The Public Works Design Manual has been updated, and now the city requests 60 feet. So the feel from the front of the home to the actual curb is going to feel very similar to all other neighborhoods in our community, but the right-of-way dedication is 60, and that's where the measurement is made from. Developer is proposing a 7.5-foot side yard setback for all of their units except the townhome units, which would have a 20-foot distance between buildings. The rear yard setback is proposed to meet the 25-foot requirement, and the side yard abutting street is also proposed like the front yard at 20 as opposed to 25. Stormwater, there's a series of stormwater ponds and biofiltration basins proposed. This is currently under review with our engineering staff and the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District. But the ponds would accomplish and meet the required rules for rate and volume control, and their stormwater management plan, it decreases the peak discharge rates below the existing conditions. So with this development, stormwater discharge rates would improve over what they are today with no development for 2, 10, and 100-year storm events. Trees, there's a lot of numbers on your screen. I apologize for that. There's approximately 4,500 inches, caliper inches of trees that were identified on the property. The developer is proposing to save 824 and remove over 3,600. So in our tree preservation plan, a development is allowed to remove 35% of the caliper inches of trees without required replacement. And then in addition, the tree preservation ordinance provides a credit of 2 times inches saved for heritage trees. Now those are the significant trees of age and size. The developer is proposing saving 283 inches of heritage trees. That all boils down to the requirement for tree planting is 482 inches of new trees. The developer is proposing 513 trees and will be planting about 1,150 inches of trees in their development. So this plan would meet and it would exceed our requirements in city code. The proposed streets, so the developer is proposing an 80-foot right-of-way width and a 44-foot wide curb to curb on Fountain Hills, which would match the existing Fountain Hills. Surrey Lane would be an 80-foot width and a 36-foot wide curb to curb. Those would both be minor collector streets. And then all of the local streets would have a 60-foot right-of-way and a 32-foot curb to curb. All of those would meet our Public Works engineering standards, as well as the cul-de-sacs. Trails was discussed during the previous public hearing. This map shows in red where the sidewalks are proposed in this development. So there's currently, south of the development, an existing trail on the south side of Carriage Hills and a sidewalk on the north side. Those would remain. There's an existing trail on the east side of County Highway 21. That would remain, and then the developer would be installing sidewalks throughout their development where it is shown on your screen. Essentially, every street will have a walking path on one side of it, and Surrey Lane will have a walking path on both sides. So for the PUD request, the developer is requesting a PUD overlay district to provide exceptions to our minimum lot width, lot area, front, side, and corner side yard setbacks, and the public benefits proposed by the developer in exchange for those modifications are enhancing the large wetland complex on the site, creating additional trail and sidewalk connections, constructing 2 important minor collector streets at developer cost, providing a variety of housing options, 4 different housing options at varying price points, dedicating additional right-of-way on Carriage Hills, County Road 21, and Fountain Hills, and contributing funding towards a future intersection improvement at 21 and Fountain Hills. And city staff supports and recommends approval of the preliminary PUD plan. And the final of our 5 requests is a preliminary plat. This would be phase 1 of a multi-phase development. So Marlowe Ridge Second Edition proposes 12 twin home units, 12 townhome units, and 22 single-family detached lots. The developer is proposing development along the southern side of the property, just north of Carriage Hills. This first phase would also dedicate the necessary right-of-way for Surrey Lane and Fountain Hills, and then through the final plat process would secure funding for the street and utility constructions in those areas of the plat. The developer prefers development from the south in this instance because that area includes all 4 different housing types, and they would like to start construction and have model units available for the spring shows. So there would be a townhome unit, a twin home unit, and then both of their single-family detached lot styles. Along with the Phase 1, the developer is proposing to extend sanitary sewer from the north side of the development from Fountain Hills, and water will be extended from the south from Carriage Hills. This plan would have sewer and water utilities within platted outlots, so the city would obtain drainage and utility easements, either legally described over the actual utility or maybe just a drainage and utility easement blanket over the entire outlot. So density of this specific development of Phase 1, the low-density residential area is approximately 7.5 acres with 22 units proposed, so roughly 2.9 units per acre. The medium-density area is just under 5 acres with 24 units proposed, so a density of 4.8, and both would be within that targeted density range. The low, again, is 2.5 to 3.9 units an acre, and the medium is 4 to 7.9. And staff supports and recommends approval of the preliminary plat as well. I wanted to touch on a little bit, I know I included some information for the commissioners and the public in the report, but we did receive some very thoughtful comments during the May 4th public hearing on this item. At times, I think residents might feel that the city didn't listen or you know, the Planning Commission didn't hear the comments, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time going through those comments and trying to address them and maybe giving reasons for why city staff takes the position that it does. I do have our Public Works Director, City Engineer Nick Monserud, with me this evening, and he will handle a few of the questions related to parks and traffic and intersections when we get to those. Along with that, we'll cover density. Trails and sidewalks was covered earlier in the report, but if you have questions, let me know. And then also, since the public hearing, I did have a couple residents reach out to me with questions about potential impacts to the school district that I thought were very good questions, so I wanted to include that information for the commission as well. Excuse me. So on density, just a few general comments from the public at the last hearing when they reviewed the site plan that was shown, saying that the density, you know, it's too many units, the overall density is too high. We were asked as staff at that meeting to provide a comparison of the proposed development with some existing subdivisions recently approved. It's difficult to do. I don't have a good apples to apples comparison for you because this development has multiple land use guidance classifications and multiple zoning districts. Most other residential developments we do, they're just low density or they're just medium density. They're not both. So I do have a few to compare, but they're not, you know, going to be truly, again, an apples to apples. So Trillium Cove is similar in the housing types that are being proposed and somewhat similar in the number of units. So that was 207 units, but Trillium Cove was only guided for low density. There was no, again, you know, this has medium density guidance. It has high density zoning guidance. Trillium Cove built 142 single family detached homes and 65 townhomes on 61 net acres for a density of 3.4 units an acre. Haven Ridge, which is located north of 42 off of Crest Avenue, that was done in multiple phases, both by M&I Homes and Winkler Land Company. That was also guided for low density residential in that 2.5 to 3.9 unit range. That development constructed 165 detached single family homes on 43 acres for a density of 3.8 per acre. And then Summit Preserve, located just north of 42 and east of this development, was done by Lennar. That was a medium density only guidance, so in that 4 to 7.9 range. That development built 193 units on 39 acres. That development included 71 single-family detached and 122 townhomes. So the density of the Summit Preserve is a bit higher at 4.95 units per acre. So Marlow Ridge is proposed overall at 3.75. Includes both low density and medium density, again, 260 units on 70 acres. The Surrey Lane, we've covered this a bit earlier, but the Surrey Lane low density area is proposed at 2.64, and the medium density is at 4.7. Parks, I'll have Nick take over the next few here.
Thanks, Casey. Commissioners, I'll dive into parks here. Marlow Ridge is proposing just over an acre private park on Outlot C. We've seen this before. They have a similar space in Trillium Cove. It's just a gathering space. I think Pulte might get into that a little bit more in their presentation, what that looks like. But the city is not seeking additional parkland in this area. We have existing parks that do serve this area, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. This is in part based on a failure of a park referendum, lack of funding to develop and maintain parks, and then just recommendations from our park and trail system plan. So following the park referendum vote, which was rejected by the voters in 2025, the city shifted our focus to identifying opportunities to enhance existing parks. We also surveyed residents as part of the referendum process, and they value very much their neighborhood parks more so than our destination parks like Lakefront and Ponds and Ryan Park. So unless an existing park is not available to serve a specific area. Our park and trail system plan, in most instances, Prior Lake far exceeds the national recreation standards for types, amounts, and distribution of parks and amenities across our park system. So the National Recreation and Parks Association, or NRPA, these are their recommendations. So one park per 1,800, just under 1,900 residents. So in comparison, Prior Lake has 51 parks, which is one park per 541 residents. 9.6 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. Prior Lake has approximately 30 acres of total parkland and 20 acres of developed parkland per 1,008 residents. One playground per 3,600 residents. Prior Lake has one playground per 673 residents. You see the trend. So we thought we'd compare to our neighboring cities just to put it into perspective a little bit more. Prior Lake population 27,600. We have 51 parks. That's 12% of land dedicated to park purposes. Savage, who's at 33,000 residents, has 23 parks, 8% of the land dedicated to park purposes. And then Shakopee at 43,000, almost 44,000. Has 40 parks with 5% of the land within the city dedicated to park purposes. So our park and trail system plan also identifies, we want to ensure that we have one high quality neighborhood park is available within a half-mile radius of each neighborhood service area having 300 or more children. That's one of our objectives outlined in there. The subject property has two high-quality parks within half a mile. If you look at the figure, we have Nob Hill Park and Carriage Hills Park. Both parks have similar amenities, but Nob Hill is a bit larger. It has wetlands and some wooded areas in addition there, but they both include picnic shelter, trails, half basketball court, open space. Diving from parks to traffic. During the public hearing, we received comments about traffic, the existing roadways to support development. Just running down the list a little bit. Carriage Hills Parkway is what we call a major collector. Today, it carries 1,800 trips per day. A major collector at full capacity, we expect to be somewhere between 6,000 and 9,000 trips a day. So we are very much under capacity. And will it ever get to 6,000 to 9,000 trips? It might not. That's not uncommon. The traffic study completed for the proposed residential development and the anticipated future commercial industrial development on Outlot A It provides trip generation estimates for both the AM and PM peak hours for the proposed residential development, utilizing the ITE trip generation manual. That is the engineering standard across the board of how we generate trips per use. The results indicate that residential development is expected to result in approximately 388 AM peak hour trips and 363 PM peak hour trips, and a total of 333,331 net new daily trips. That's the residential development once it's fully built out. And again, these aren't all going to go to one spot. They're not all going to Carriage Hills. We're putting in Fountain Hills that'll have 2 access points to the development. You have two access points along Carriage Hills as well, so that gets distributed among 4 access points. As part of the traffic study, they looked at the 5-year crash history at intersections in the project and found 0 crashes at the intersection of 21 and Carriage Hills. The traffic study also rated level of service to evaluate different traffic intersections. So what level of service is, it's a rating system from A to F. Think about it as a class in school. A is excellent, F is failing, a D can probably get you through sometimes. So in some instances, a D is acceptable.
A D?
I did say a
As in
D.
God get you through?
Yep, occasionally.
Wow,
Yep.
okay.
The traffic study included operational analysis of the intersections in the future based on certain development scenarios. In 2037, based on the proposed residential development only, Carriage Hills and 21 intersection will function at a level of service A and B during the AM peak hours and a level of service A and C during the PM peak hours. It does note when assuming the full build out of the commercial area north of Fountain Hills, the Carriage Hills 21 intersection will function at an AC level during the AM hours and an AE during the peak hours, during the PM peak hours. The study also analyzed future volume scenarios to anticipate when intersection improvements would be required based on traffic warrants. Warrants are primarily the volume of traffic on all legs of the intersection. So for instance, if we're talking about 21 and Fountain Hills, 21 is pretty set right now. If we add another leg to Fountain Hills, so it's a 4-legged intersection, you look at that cross traffic, and once it hits a certain number and functionality, that's a warrant, and it'll drive the need for something to be done there. So the study does note the business park development will be the primary contributor to needing something to be done at 21 and Fountain Hills. So under the 2030 and the 37 build scenarios, which assume the business office park area is developed, traffic warrants are anticipated to be met, which would justify intersection improvements at 21 and Fountain Hills. Until that is fully built out, it recommends maintaining the existing through and then stop traffic control. And then as part of that, to be sensitive of the future of that intersection, escrow funds will be required of the developer to be contributed towards a future intersection project there. We also heard about speed, concerns about speed on Carriage Hills. The assumption is more development equals more speeding vehicles. That's not true necessarily. One thing that's unique about Carriage Hills is it's a divided roadway. Also, one side of it is entirely farmland with no intersections whatsoever. So when people don't have an intersection to look out for or something that has cars or houses on one side, the speed tends to creep up. So Carriage Hills is what we call a state aid road. We designate it as a state aid collector road, which makes us eligible for funding. As part of that, we have to count it every 3 years to maintain that status. So as part of that, when we count it, we also do a speed study. So we did do a speed study on Carriage Hills Parkway in May of '25. It's conducted over 48 hours, and our traffic counters aren't the feedback signs that is a trailer sitting out there telling me how fast I'm going. They are the size of an iPad. They have a black cover on them, and we nail them down to the pavement. So if you're not looking for them, you're not going to see them. And they'll count the speed and then also the volume. So eastbound on Carriage Hills had 1,900 vehicles pass through it. The peak volume was between 4:30, 4:45 p.m., which makes sense, 43 vehicles. The average daily traffic was 976 vehicles. The posted speed is 35 miles an hour. Average speed was 37 miles an hour, and the 85th percentile speed was just under 42 miles per hour. So the 85th percentile speed, 85% of the cars, of those 976 cars, are under 42 miles an hour. Everyone else has their foot on the gas. Westbound, so westbound, similar to what I mentioned before, no intersections, you're going along a farm field. So similar volume of vehicles passing through it, 1,900. Peak volume was 32 between 8:45 and 9 a.m. I believe that could be attributed to schools. I think that's a late start school, which is around 9:20, 9:30. So buses going through, parents dropping off, that does make sense. Annual daily traffic, just under 1,000. The posted speed limit is 35, as I mentioned earlier. Average speed was 38 miles an hour, so it ticked up one. And then same with the 85th percentile speed, it ticked up another 1.5 miles an hour. Again, we attribute that to you're just cruising down, you have no intersections to look for, there's no crosswalks there until you're at an intersection. So the speeds get away a little bit.
Thank you, Nick. The last slide we wanted to touch on is the school district impact. So we didn't get a comment on that during the public hearing, but I had a couple people reach out directly and ask, what has the city looked into the impact of this into the schools? And I thought it was a great question because the school district is very much top of mind in this community. So we did reach out to the school and talk to their district staff, but also, just so the community is aware, we meet with the school district every year. We talk about developments that are in our planning stages, which ones might be in the pipeline, where we see growth happen, what were our average housing starts over the last 10 years. Are we seeing townhomes? Are we seeing apartments? Are we seeing residential? So we do that every year anyway, but because it was brought up, we wanted to reach out and get some additional information. So much like the city, the school district has their pulse on, our housing data, Savage's housing data, everywhere within their district. They're looking at forecasts, they're looking at demographic trends, so, aging population, lower birth rates per household, those types of things to do projections for their planning purposes. So one item with this Vierling family development, this development was in their projections. It was anticipated to come, and they're still projecting a decreasing enrollment. So they've experienced a decreasing enrollment over the past, 4 years on this chart, and they're projecting a decreasing enrollment in the future. So the school district comments back to the city where, yes, we did anticipate the Vierling family property being developed, and that is in our projections. The comments were residential growth can help stabilize enrollment and provide per pupil funding that they need to support staffing and programs. And then also that Jeffers Pond Elementary has would be the elementary school to serve this neighborhood, and they do have capacity across grade levels to accommodate any projected enrollment from this development. And with that, Planning Commission, that concludes our staff report. Staff is recommending approval of the 5 requests. The applicant is in attendance with some of their development team and engineers. If you have questions for them, I believe they have a brief presentation they wanted to run through as well, but we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Casey and Nick. Excellent report. Thank you for capturing all of the questions that we fielded previous to this meeting and providing just a really great summary for us to think about and synthesize. Before we hear from the applicant, we do have, I think we may have some questions for you. I'm going to start. So my first question for staff would be, what types of entities are being considered for the business site?
I apologize. Let me just open that. One was a gas station. I have it right here. A gas station, convenience store, a drive-in bank, daycare, fast food restaurant with a drive-through, and general office and light industrial uses.
Okay, great.
Just to
Thanks.
piggyback on that and confirm for the audience and folks at home, those commercial developments are not being proposed. They were just used for the purpose of the traffic study to forecast future needs.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get just an overall sense of what the concept might be or could be, post completion of this particular outlot. The land use amendments, I know the City Council will recommend that the City Council take a look at this at some point. Does the Met Council, will they also have any role in reviewing this?
Yes, Commissioner, the land use plan amendments it's a multi-step, so I'll go to the right screen here. So when we get an application for a land use plan amendment, we are required by the Met Council, unless they grant us a waiver, which they did not in this case. We have a list on our community page. There's 16 adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So it's all of the communities that surround us, the townships, and then organizations like the watershed districts and the DNR and the SMSC. And so we provide written notification to them of the proposed amendment. They get 60 days to comment back if they have any comments on our land use plan amendment. In this case, we did get 7 responses back. All of them were no comment responses. If the City Council approves of this change, then we would send the resolution and this records of these public hearings and everything to the Metropolitan Council. They review our proposed changes in relation to our approved comprehensive plan to see if there's any impacts on the utilities in the area, streets, infrastructure, trails, sidewalks, parks, wetlands, things like that. A development of this size would require smaller land use plan amendments can be administratively approved by staff at the Met Council. A development of this size would require full board consideration and approval.
Great. Thanks, Casey. I wanted to get that on the record just so our residents understand that there's a whole cadence and tier of approvals, and we're not just approving things willy-nilly. So thank you for that. Just a couple more. So the 7.5-foot side setback, are there any adverse implications by maintaining, would there be any adverse implications by maintaining the 10-foot side setbacks? And I'm going to pose that question to the applicant as well.
Yeah, maybe the applicant would have some feeling on the 10. I know the 7.5 is somewhat in line with what we've seen in our recent subdivisions. Some of the other ones referenced earlier as comparisons had 7.5, some even had 4.5-foot side yard setbacks, which once you get below 5, it can be a little tricky to get in and out of the backyard and get grass to grow if that's what you desire. But maybe the applicant would have a feeling other than loss of, I'm sure there would be a loss of some units.
Okay, great. And this one will also be a double play as well for staff and the applicant. But just generally, why do you think, or what's staff's thoughts about why we believe that future residents and developers want to live in Prior Lake and/or build in Prior Lake. What are your thoughts about that?
Just from being here for 15 years, it is a well-respected school district. It is the lake, of course. It's the parks and the natural spaces around the community. Safe community. And I think Prior Lake is a very desirable place for people to raise a family.
Great. Those are all my questions. Commissioner Nicholson?
Question for staff, and I am still getting comfortable with how we evaluate PUDs, so I want to make sure I understand the trade-off. In thinking about the selling point of the PUD is the offsetting public benefits, correct? And I just wanted to know if you could opine on which of those stated benefits would otherwise not be required under just a standard conventional subdivision. I mean, what are we getting above and beyond just a standard residential construction project?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. So in this case, the developer working with the watershed district to improve the quality of the large wetland on the site would not be a requirement of a standard traditional subdivision. We would have sidewalks and trails along the collector streets that are being proposed, but we would not require those along the local streets. The developer constructing, so the street width at a 32-foot local street and a 44-foot collector for Fountain Hills, for Surrey at 36, those would be discussion points. I'm sure we would get some pushback potentially on maybe wanting to do a 28-foot street instead of a 32. And then the additional right-of-way contributions to County Road 21. So the county can request or require a specific right-of-way width, but they only can go to a certain point, and then they would have to acquire right-of-way. I don't know the actual numbers off.
The city would be on the hook for 50% of that cost anytime they have to acquire the right-of-way within city limits.
So if, they're granting more right-of-way than they would be required to, so that is saving the county and the city cost in that acquisition.
Thank you. The other was a comment in thinking about the traffic and the speeding issues that were noted. Should any safety measures be considered as part of the approval or part of the future final plat review? So in thinking about any traffic calming measures or any signage be required as part of the approval?
I don't think so at this time. I think we will continue to watch it as it gets built out and see and monitor the traffic patterns. We do have a traffic safety committee that does review these things, and we meet about quarterly, I would say. So it could be as simple as just getting sections of the road on our PD's list to bring out that speed feedback trailer, or it could be just sending out letters, educating folks, hey, slow down, and then additional enforcement, of course, is kind of the last resort we don't want to do, but understand it is necessary.
No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Nicholson. Commissioner Schmokel?
Hi, I'm going to look into the stormwater management questions here a little bit. And first off, I think the level of detail and commentary that you had in the city memo was astounding. That was really great. That was very, very helpful. Probably didn't have enough time to look through, but it gave me a great deal of confidence that you guys are really on it. So I'm going to ask a question kind of from a fellow resident. What is that basin going to look like? Will it look natural, or are we going to see something kind of contrived and artificial?
So the larger wetland that the watershed district is proposing to improve along with Pulte will be more natural. They want to raise the water level, which will give it more of a standing water, more lake feel, if you will. But it will be a natural look, not manicured, if you will.
Where are they proposing trees around it to make it a little more woodlandy, or will we see kind of like rain garden ditches viewed? Is that view there where I see that secondary water that little finger kind of suggests that to me.
Between the two blue
Yeah.
areas, if you
Yeah,
will.
is it-
I will probably defer that to Pulte. They have a better idea on what's going there. But it'll be some sort of vegetated buffer, which is usually taller grasses, sometimes it's wildflowers.
Okay. And then its use as a filtration basin, that's interesting. I'm glad to hear it's going to be deep and get that standing water look. How would you rate the complexity of the design, like on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, hey, this is pretty straightforward, versus gnarly, we're dealing with a lot of entities and a lot of challenging engineering complexities?
Great question.
And maybe you don't know at this point.
I would say filtration basins are basically the engineering standard these days, to avoid having to put in infiltration, because soils, unless you're in sand, it's not going to work. So I'd probably just give it a middle line 3.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to talk about traffic now. I don't think I've got through that. I want to tell everybody here, we do listen to you. At the last hearing, I heard people talk about how busy it is, and I would bike through Carriage Hills periodically myself, so I can hear you. So ever since that hearing, I took it upon myself to always go down that route, and I've probably been on it more than fingers I have. I saw the traffic trailer, and I wondered, again, Nick, I asked you whether it really dissuades people, it makes them go slower. I did still see people going fast, but I think the thing that really I wanted to pass on to staff is I was astounded by how much pedestrian traffic was out there. On any given day, 3 clusters was the minimum. 4 to 6 was about average for that range from Sandpoint to 21. So I can see how the people would feel that perceptually, there are a lot of people out there feeling that. And I also kind of feel when I see the 85 percentile that means 15% more cars are going more than 10 miles over the speed limit, more than 45 miles an hour. That feels kind of scary when I can combine that with what the pedestrian traffic I observed. So I guess I still have a little, and I know it's not unique to other areas in our town, but I still hear you, and I kind of felt that too about the traffic. So I was really digging into the traffic studies a little bit more and wondering, as we look at more traffic studies, more as it builds out, what are we going to do with, and we find more issues. And I guess that's more of an observation, but really saying I've heard these guys, and I think they've got a lot, there's something there. And then I guess, and this is a detail, maybe it's more for Alliant, the study manager, so I'm not necessarily asking for an answer for you guys because it was deep in the weeds. But some of the traffic flow numbers seemed a little illogical, like there was an imbalance of cars going in and out. I guess if I had to point to like one area that it was indicative, when I look at Carriage Hills going into and out of 21, it seemed like there was a whole lot as the years progressed going northbound out, but then the same number wasn't coming in. And I couldn't see where they would be coming in other areas. And that was more of a curiosity point, like what is this traffic telling us about how it's going to progress? And again, I'm not answering, I don't think I would expect an answer at this point because that's really deep in the weeds.
Yep, that would be a good question for the applicant if they're available.
That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmokel. Commissioner Yurko?
Yes, a couple questions. Thank you for the diving deeper into the safety, the pedestrian pieces, as well as the park and the traffic. I'd like to bring all those together. And so I would like to know, knowing what we know about the speed, the amount of pedestrians we see, where the parks are located, what will be done for this new development north of Carriage Hills Parkway and the residents there to safely cross Carriage Hills Parkway and access the park?
Do you want to jump out to the other park with the 2 parks? There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so with the new development, the only crossing at Carriage Hills would be to get to Carriage Hills Park. Again, there will be 2 new intersections there, so we typically put crosswalks at our intersections and verify sight lines makes sense and sign it appropriately. So that will be done at the main entrance on, I believe it's Surrey is the north-south. And then to get to Nob Hill Park, again, that's on the same side, so that helps, but you do have to cross Pike Lake Trail, which is a busier road as well. So crosswalk, pedestrian crossings, and signing them appropriately.
I feel like the Carriage Hills is the one that is the most concerning to me because it's the closest to where the development is. I feel like that's going to see more traffic, foot traffic from residents of the new development. And with that being such a broad road with a boulevard in the middle, I think we need more than a crosswalk. I think there needs to be some kind of a signal of some kind to alert vehicles that pedestrians are crossing what is a broader roadway with trees and a boulevard and everything that can provide some sightline issues.
That is certainly a possibility. We tend to not put those in until we have the data to support them. We treat it no different than an intersection. We would look for a certain number of pedestrians per hour. We have to do pedestrian counts in those instances, but I certainly understand the comment, and we do want to make sure the sight lines are there. One benefit to having a boulevard in the middle of the road is that is a place of refuge for it, so it does shorten the actual distance of crossing each leg of Carriage Hill. So that is a benefit that we have there existing today. But absolutely, we will keep monitoring that. If there are significant pedestrian crossings, we would look to do something else, whether it's a blinking sign, whether it's a push button style.
Yeah.
We would look for the data to tell us that we need to do that.
Okay. Concerns as well with just it being east-west oriented and sunrise, sunset, those are peak hours of pedestrian activity, and also can't sight,
Right.
being able to see. So that's where my concern is as well, with it being such a broad road and seeing the speed of the vehicles as well. Let me go to, I'm going to move here into wetlands, since my colleague brought up some great points there. Well, that wetland, there's a great wetland just on the west side of 21 in Jeffers, which is a low water level, but has the, surface water, I'll say, appearance, and a lot of natural perimeter. Would this be proposed to be somewhat similar to the one on the west side behind the Enclave homes?
The lake, the bigger one. Not that.
Well, there's
not that big.
Smaller branches off of that big one, but
Yep, but similar buffers, wetland
Yeah.
buffers that would be similar, adjacent to those Enclave homes,
okay,
and
Right.
more natural.
yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to go to the setback reduction that's being requested. With the setback reductions, the 20 feet side yard abutting a street, seeing the layout of the planned unit development, is there any concerns with traffic sightlines for those abutting street side yards?
Commissioner, no concerns with sightlines. The homes will be set back sufficient from the intersections.
So there shouldn't be any issues there. Okay. And then also with the setbacks, there's quite a bit of developments in this whole area. So what are the setbacks in the development of Carriage Hills and Raspberry Ridge?
That development was, I think, a mid-90s development, so I would assume the setbacks are 25 feet in the front and 10 on the sides.
Okay. How about over on the west side of 21, there's, those are all single-family homes. I don't think there's anything but single-family in Carriage Hills and Raspberry Ridge. But on the west side of 21, there's quite a bit. There's a whole development of twin homes off of Jeffers Pass, off of Raspberry Ridge Road. There's twin homes, there's townhomes. What are the setbacks throughout those developments?
They're probably different in every one of the developments, but in recent years, the recent developments in there most of them would have probably received a reduced setback as well. because I believe most of those were planned unit development approvals. So I'm guessing probably in this similar 7.5-foot range.
Wild Horse Pass is another one that stands out for me, that kind of bridges between Jeffers and the Wilds there.
Yeah,
Okay,
we deal with so many of these there, and they're all different. There's not a standard PUD side yard setback, so I wouldn't be able to answer that.
when I try to zoom out and I envision this one overlaid in the open land, and I look at the density of these other developments, it doesn't seem to stand out as something that would catch my eye and say, this is something really unique and very, very different from what already has contextually been developed on this kind of entire corridor of County Road 21 feeding east and west. Yes?
I agree, yeah.
Okay.
At 7.5-foot setbacks, even if they're built to the maximum setback, there's still going to be 15 feet between
Yeah,
units.
okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tennyson.
Thank you. Just two questions. On the land use amendment, the side-by-side visual, can you pull that up? So the business office park reduction, the majority of it, like you said, is the 13 acres of wetland. How much are we giving up for the houses in terms of acreage for the business park, or for, giving up on the business park?
Roughly 10 acres,
10
Commissioner.
acres, okay. And then can you remind me, what is neighborhood commercial?
Neighborhood commercial would be similar to the southwest corner of the Highway 13 and 42 intersection.
Okay.
More of office type, you wouldn't probably see a drive-through restaurant, but you would have dental offices and
Sure.
realtors and insurance and things like that.
Gotcha, okay. And then you said something I didn't catch it about the front setback. What did you say about the front setback again?
So the applicant is requesting a reduction in the required front yard setback from 25 feet to 20 feet. But also, they're providing a 60-foot right-of-way instead of a 50-foot right-of-way.
Okay.
So the feel from the front of the house to the curb is going to be very similar, whether it was 25-foot setback to a 50-foot right-of-way or a 20-foot to a 60-foot right-of-way.
Thank you for repeating it. That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Finstermacher.
Mine's a similar question with the neighborhood commercial. If you go one more slide, maybe a couple, go back, I don't know which direction. There you go. You have the neighborhood commercial. Can you explain the difference between the current zoning map versus what the land use plan, why there's a difference there?
That's a good question, because there shouldn't be a major difference. So when this was the zoning map that was in place when the last comprehensive plan was adopted and the land uses were changed, at times we'll work with the property owner and they can request a zoning amendment. We don't normally do it on our own as staff to just change someone's zoning without their request. So the land use plan is what ultimately guides the development, and the zoning is what exists today. So we can't, even though this says C1 neighborhood commercial on our zoning map, we can't develop that as C1 neighborhood commercial because it doesn't conform with our comprehensive land use plan. So one of the two or both would require an amendment before development can happen. We generally wait for a development to be proposed before we would make those amendments.
So essentially, when the last land use plan was adopted, that was removed for the business park portion or some other variant.
Yes, and this may have it was quite a while ago, but I know at one point they did a kind of a County Road 42 and 21 corridor study in this area to do some future land use planning and potentially marketing of some properties. So I'm guessing as an outcome of that study, the zoning map was maybe changed, but I don't know for certain.
And with your analysis of the parks, one question I had that popped up was, when you're looking at how many parks we have and how much land was dedicated for parks and whatnot, did that include only city-owned parks? We have other parks or other open land that's kind of like a park in town as well. Does that include those?
Only city-owned parks.
So we have essentially more than that even.
Yes,
with
and
some of the
outlots.
others.
Correct. And regional parks.
Obviously, they're not necessarily adjacent to this development, but the number in the total community is much, even more than that. If you
Correct.
count all those, thank you. For the traffic, just to be clear, the analysis is all based on models, right? That's the best case you can really do. You can't really analyze really on anything else other than data on models, so. Which explains the whether or not traffic counts are going up, the density wise, it's not really playing into it. Speed isn't an issue with the data you're looking at. Sight lines, does that play into this when it comes to safety concerns?
It does. So as part of going through final plat, we will look at the sight lines of every intersection versus vertical curves and horizontal curves to make sure they meet standards for the speed of the road.
And along 21 as well?
Along 21 as well.
Yeah, I know personally, as I come up to 21 from Carriage Hills going west, it's hard to see to the right,
Yes.
to the north.
Yep.
And that's probably the hardest part of that, in my own opinion. But so that'll likely be improved or analyzed if it needs to be improved, so
Correct. It'll be.
thank
yep.
you. And my other comment was kind of answered with crosswalks. You will be adding crosswalks at those new intersections to cross Carriage Hills so people can cross to the park. So,
Correct.
yep. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rook?
Thank you again for the diligence and the detail, obviously, on this, as you're preparing this. Can you go to slide 11 for me, please, Casey? The delta of the total change still has this falling in what we would consider, on average, about an LDR. Even though the blended average between the two still has this falling in about an LDR. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then, sorry to make you jump around, slide 32, I just want to make sure I'm hearing the peak hours for traffic, that grading, last bullet point, in the PM peak hours and A through E. Can I understand that a little bit more, please?
Yes, so that, the AE designation is different legs of the intersection, if I will. It's be the north-south and the east-west. So one of them is performing extremely well at the A.
Yep.
The other is slipping down to that E level and almost failing. Does that help make sense? And that's their intervals of time. So an A is like sitting at the intersection for, I think it's like 0 to 9 seconds, and F is almost 2 minutes before you can move.
And that grading is after the assumption of a full build-out.
A full build-out residential and commercial,
Yep.
correct.
Great, thank you. That's it.
Great. Any lingering thoughts or comments, Commissioners? Great thoughts, great questions. Anyone? All right, would the applicant like to approach, please? And you've heard some of our comments, you've heard the staff report, so we'd be interested in your thoughts and responses to some of that commentary.
Thank you. Thank you for the time tonight. My name is Paul Hoyer with Pulte Homes, 1650 82nd Street West, Suite 300, Bloomington, Minnesota, 44311. I've got a short presentation tonight. I took a guess at what Casey would cover with his presentation, and I tried to cover things that maybe he wouldn't cover so that you'd get a full breadth of things. So I'm going to try to give a short presentation and interweave some answers to some of the questions I heard here tonight. We're going to have a short introduction of our company, talk a bit about our vision for the property, talk a bit about the homes since we really didn't submit much information about them in our application, and finally leave you with a quick summary. Who's Pulte Group? We build about 600 homes a year. Our office is in Bloomington, and recently we have built homes in your city, these blue outlined neighborhoods called Trillium Cove and Lockwood to the east. We build in the Twin Cities under two name brands. One is Pulte Homes, and you might have heard of Del Webb as well. We're known for our popular floor plans, having integrity, being easy to work with, and our strict and detailed construction process. Our vision for the site, really, it summarizes this simply for us. We wanted to prepare the 27-acre business office park land north of Fountain Hills Drive for development. We knew that was a strong priority for the city. The demand for that, it just kind of disappeared as mortgage rates and interest rates went up over the last couple of years, but there's still definitely demand in the future for there. So one of our goals was really to just set that up for easy development in the future. We're also developing what the market can support right now, which is really all the residential land. We're providing badly needed housing. We see this in a lot of cities where we just can't provide enough housing for what people are looking for. And finally, two more things: improve Pike Lake water quality, and Pulte completes infrastructure in this area. So this is kind of an infill development, really. Everything around it is developed, so it's kind of filling in the final pieces. I've got one slide here about Pike Lake, improved water quality, and another one about the infrastructure, just to give you a little bit more information. As Casey said, Pike Lake downstream is very poor water quality. A large reason for that is this property. For 100 and some years, we've seen a lot of nutrients that have just accumulated in this wetland, and they get washed downstream into Pike Lake. So kind of feeding into the question about what will it look like, the Watershed District asked us to raise the water level to about 3 feet deep. And the hope in doing that is to really maintain the nutrients on the floor of the wetland and have the water kind of drain out without taking the nutrients with it. So that's a layman's term way to look at it. It also tells you it probably will look a little better too, so it's really a win-win there. Completing the infrastructure systems. Everything shown in red here are major streets that kind of finish out the infrastructure and the street system in this area. You see a blue line there. We also have actually a water main going from Carriage Hills Drive up to Fountain Hills Lane as well. So really, it strengthens both the water system and the street system for this area. And finally, the homes. Life cycle housing is one of the primary goals that you have in your comp plan. What that means is really providing housing for every stage of people's lives. And we're really doing that within this neighborhood. The townhomes are really targeting first-time home buyers, which are oftentimes singles, couples, occasionally a small child. Single-family homes for young families, larger single-family homes for what we call move-up buyers. And finally, in bold here, the single-level homes, 55 and older, for singles and couples. That is really a strong demand throughout the Twin Cities area. A lot of people are looking at that age, 55 and older, for single-level homes and homes that are really designed for that stage of life. A little bit more about the townhomes. We have 3 different floor plans. Square footage is shown there. And the price points that we expect are averaging about $410,000. The single-family homes that are on the 65-foot lots, 5 different floor plans, pretty sizable homes, and the average selling price we expect is $675,000. And the larger lots for single-family, 5 different floor plans, these are quite large homes. We would call them luxury homes, and the average selling price would be $825,000. And finally, the twin homes, which I don't have a lot of pretty pictures because we haven't built these twin homes yet in the Twin Cities, but we've built many of these same floor plans as single homes in our Del Webb communities. Some of you might have heard of Del Webb in the past. Anything that has Sun City in front of it or Anthem across the country, you know, those are very famous, iconic Del Webb communities. Typically, a Del Webb community is quite large, has a lot of amenities, but the homes are designed specifically, again, for the 55 and older. A lot of these buyers are really looking for a different lifestyle. They've had the large yard, and they might have enjoyed taking care of it for a time, but they're really looking for a homeowners association that will take care of the snow removal right up to their front door, to take care of the lawn, those sorts of things. And it's really a low-maintenance lifestyle that they're looking for. A little bit more about those twin homes. The homes themselves are also designed specifically for the 55 and older folks. There's additional light, zero entry showers, wider doorways to make it easier for walkers and wheelchairs to get through them. They're fairly small homes, 1,600 feet, because again, there's only 1 or 2 people living in these homes instead of a family of, 5 people. And typically the average price here is about $500,000 for those homes. And finally, a one-slide summary here, the benefits of this application. It really matches the city's vision for this area. It provides badly needed life cycle housing in this area. It completes infrastructure systems in this area, and it really sets up the business park for future development. And finally, Pike Lake water quality improvement was, we kind of lucked into that one when the watershed district approached us, but again, it was just such an easy win-win that it's going to work well. And that's all I have, but I don't think I answered all your questions. One of the questions I meant to address was the chair's side setbacks. Throughout the Twin Cities, the average side setback for detached homes is typically 7.5 feet on both sides. Typically for our twin homes, actually, it's more like 5 feet. So anything that's aimed at empty nesters and they have homeowners association maintained yards, typically that person is liking to minimize their cost and their maintenance. So those are typically 5 and 5 side setbacks, and single family homes are typically 7.5 and 7.5. Another question was, why do people want to live in Prior Lake? Great question, great school district. There's a great reputation. The lake is a draw for people. There's no question about that. In this particular case, a great location in terms of access to 169 and jobs. So really a great location from that standpoint as well. So a lot of good reasons. There was another question about ponds and their appearance and tree plantings and things like that. There are regulations that prevent us really from planting a lot of trees in the area we talked about between the pond and the wetland. That is a maintenance bench where the city trucks can drive around it and do things in the future like dredge out the pond in 30 years or whenever that occurs. So there are restraints in terms of what we can do. The ponds will look very similar to what you see in other neighborhoods. The wetland over time will look rather nice. Typically on the edges we'll see some cattails. It won't be a mowed or riprap rock, along the edges like a golf course. It will look very natural. And that's all I have, unless you have any more questions for me.
Thank you. Thank you for addressing those questions. I don't have any, but I want to give my fellow commissioners an opportunity to offer thoughts or questions. Commissioner Rook?
When do you expect you'd have residents moving into homes?
Let me do the math here. Somewhere between April and June of 2027.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fenstermacher?
I don't believe we touched on it in the opening, but I think I heard it on the previous public hearing, but the intention with this would be to develop from the south and move to the north, and you're accessing from Fountain Hills, so your impact to the south is minimized. Is that fair to be?
Yeah, we're always trying to thread the needle and make everybody happy. We can't do that. We fail oftentimes, especially with neighbors. We know that it's a priority for the city to have Fountain Hills Lane extended through to 21 and to build the north-south collector street. So we heard that message loud and clear, and it took us a long time to figure out how to do that, but we managed to do that. So that is why we included both of those streets in our application and in our finances. But still, starting from the south is really best for us. So we envision that our first development agreement with the city will say, as part of this agreement, we are going to have to build those 2 roads. We don't have to do it in 2026 because there won't be time, but nevertheless, we're putting up sureties to make sure that we do that work next year.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Given what's happening in the I'm going to say the local, regional, national economy, I know you all are sort of following those benchmarks and fluctuations and volatility. What do you anticipate in terms of just the integrity of the process and meeting the timeline?
In our industry, there's great risk, and things change rather quickly. On the other hand, the process that I go through typically takes 2 years. In this case, we've been trying to buy this property for 11 years. So things change often during our cycles. Having said that, there are two things kind of in conflict right now. For the last 40, 50 years, we've seen incomes increase at a lower rate than house prices have increased. So that's a really bad trend, and it means that every year, less and less people can afford the American dream. So that's the negative. The positive is we're still able to find buyers, and we're still able to sell homes. We wish we could sell more homes to more people, but that is the way things are. So our outlook right now is if things continue the way they are, we'll continue to sell homes. We've done pretty well in Prior Lake. There's been a lot of great demand in Trillium Cove and Lockwood. But then again, if we go into a recession, yes, things change for us, and we have to adapt on the fly. That's about all I can say about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Tennyson.
So this might sound a little redundant, but I'll just ask the question maybe a different way. Given all what you just said, like how many plan phases are there in terms of start to finish?
3 to 4.
Okay.
Based on sales.
Sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Yurko.
Question for you regarding the setback reductions that are being requested. If you were to have to meet the setbacks, the rear 25 and the side yards 10, what would that impact be to the overall development?
Yeah. This was a long conversation that we had with city staff, both in planning and engineering. You've seen some of the graphics that Casey showed about how much elevation difference there is throughout the site. It's a challenging property to develop. So when we start requiring more kind of flat space, which is what more right-of-way, more setback really ends up being, it becomes much harder to make this work. So truth is, when we were working on putting this property under contract to purchase, we were working off of your, at that time, current standards, 50-foot right-of-way. We learned later when we came in that in that time frame that we actually put the property under contract, your rules had changed. So this was a creative way to find a way to give the city what they want and still have it fit as we had expected.
If you had to meet those requirements, I'm assuming there'd be less homes, less outlots?
Yes, less homes.
Do you have a number?
I don't.
So you don't, there hasn't been an actual layout that meets the
No.
requirements? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schmokel.
I'm really glad you're working with the Watershed District to help improve Pike Lake. I think that partnering is a really great example, and I'd really love to see that, more of that happen. Now, so as far as the appearance of the wetland, so I'm understanding you're saying there's not going to be like that riprap, the masses of rocks.
Right.
It's more about having a gradation of vegetation that just naturally takes over, like cattails?
Yes, and it'll take some time. So right now, the pipe that takes water out of the wetland is actually below the bottom of the wetland.
Okay.
So or I should say higher than the wetland. So it's a little strange right now, and it dries up. Once we have new pipes installed, it will raise the water level, and it'll take some time for the vegetation to really start growing that's natural on the edges of the wetland. So it may take a season or 2 or 3 before it becomes kind of mature, but it'll take a little bit of time for those plants to really grab.
Yeah, just like Jeffers did, too.
Yes.
And then, so there's going to be a little bit of access pathway or road for maintenance?
Yes.
Whereabouts again on that is that?
Between the wetland and the pond, that kind of berm in between
Right,
them.
okay, the berm issue, okay. So we could still possibly see that disguised a little bit, that kind of industrial look disguised as the cattails and so forth kind of emerge.
Yeah, I would say the cattails won't get high enough to be on top of that, so you'll still
It would
see the
soften
berm.
a bit.
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, somewhere in the details, I saw a note that there was going to be escrow funds from you set aside for possible future intersection updates. So given all the talk of traffic and maybe the need to address things as we learn more, can you talk a little bit more about that? What
Sure.
does that mean? I guess you're safeguarding us in the future from having spending.
Yeah, you know, we're trying to find a win-win here. We understand the city's position. You've been collecting, fees as other developments come in, and someday a signal may be required at Fountain Lane Drive and 21. Currently, our modeling shows with the assumptions we made about what will happen in the business office park, it will pass the threshold of needing a traffic signal. It's possible that a traffic signal is never needed there. So we have to work through that. How do I put this? So we'd like to have something in our development agreement that commits us to paying our 25% share of that cost, but our ability to get the money back if a signal is never needed based on lower traffic generated uses in business office park.
So is that percentage of whatever the escrow is set aside, is that already decided between the city? Is that more of a cooperative agreement? How does that work?
Yeah, we have to work through that when we get to the final plat, but typically the standard in the industry is this is 25% because that's one leg out of 4 legs of the intersection.
Okay, and would it only be for Fountain Hills, or would it also be for Carriage Hills if we see that there's a...
It would only be for Fountain Hills and 21. There are whispers that the county has, I'm going to back up and say that counties and cities are very good at planning ahead for what ultimate transportation improvements are needed. The county knows exactly how much right-of-way they need because they've done this for decades and decades. So they recognize that at the intersection of 21 and Carriage Hills Drive, there may be a need for some kind of change or improvements at some point in time. They haven't talked about a signal. I'm not sure what their plan is.
Okay, so it's really just Fountain Hills?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Nicholson?
No additional questions.
Thank you. Anything else you want us to know?
No, thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, at this time, which is 7:27 p.m., I'll entertain a motion and a second to open the public forum. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. If you wish to address the commission, I'd ask that you approach the podium, press the red button, state your name and address for the record. Thank you so much.
There's a green button here. Do you want me to push the green button?
No.
That means it's
Okay,
on.
I heard red button. Okay, Evan Shattuck, 4841 Beach Street, Northeast, Prior Lake, Minnesota. Yeah, I've got that a little memorized. And so just a little east of what's been talked about. The townhouses, my main concern the last time, and I've done an email maybe with Casey, I don't remember who did a really good response on density of housing. But, so there's more townhouses in this strip than there are townhouses in Trillium, maybe by a quantity of 2. I just zoomed in on the map and counted, Google satellite view. Are they the same? So density of just that section, because the thing is with overall density, you can play games and maybe have very low density to the east side to help offset so that overall it sounds like great density. But my vision of Carriage Hills Parkway is it's going to be a gigantic Great Wall of China along that whole road. And if it was somewhere else, that'd be fine, because I wouldn't see it. Okay, fine. Okay, so what's the density of that section compared to how many acres is that section? And what's the acreage of the Trillium Cove and the density between those two?
Sir, we'll have you, if that's your only question, we'll respond. Otherwise, we'll take all of your questions and then respond at the end.
Notes there, and down here. All of those are questions. and you maybe want me to prioritize them. But that's the number one. With that one would be, I went to the street view after counting them, and when the photo, like, I don't know if you'd call it a site plan, was shown for the townhouses, it was a 2-story shown. But if you pull up the Pulte, they're 3-story. So is it a 2-story or a 3-story? Back to the Great Wall of China kind of a view. You know, that is a big eyesore right on a major road, right where there's a park, right where people will be lounging and people have existing houses where they've been sitting there. They never knew what was going to show up. So, you know, they just took a risk. So I'm happy to have real capitalism where people actually can build stuff and say, if you can sell it, great. But I want to make sure that it's not a total eyesore. So that's how tall are the buildings, because you showed something that is not representative of Trillium. So I can't use Trillium. Trillium has been used for multiple comparisons, but it's a 3-story at Trillium and a 2-story for the drawing. I think Trillium might be closer to reality there. Trillium Cove, we drove around there, and I was wondering, where do visitors park? In this, where do the visitors park? Trillium Cove has no room in driveways to park. Yeah, that's an overstatement, but I was thinking, if you had a party here, where do you park? And there's driveway, driveway, driveway. You can't park on the street. Okay, maybe they'll park on Carriage Hills Parkway. Well, when the baseball games are going, okay, now you got a battle there. Okay, there's that. Now we're still with some. Now it's car density issues. I'd be happy to sit in an office and discuss some of these. I just want to make sure that things like this are asked before. We keep seeing the same drawing. I think that drawing is bad. I'd rather. I'm sorry to Vierling, who I'm just glad if he can sell it and make money and move on, great. I'd rather he be paid a little less and maybe you have a little lower density or whatever, if that's what it took for a trade-off, just so that if that's what it takes to resolve anything. I had talked last time about a roundabout, and maybe that's just not needed at all, because of all the traffic pattern stuff you talked about. I do know that once the plat's done or once they get far enough along, you'll never add one because it means you're impinging into someone's yard. So I recently drove northbound on 21 and got to the bottom of the hill from 42. And if you turn left and go through the Mindawakaton property, rather prairie land, ooh, now that's those are large multiple roundabouts. Sometimes just drive that anyway. They really develop wonderfully there. This is not a question, I'm sorry, but yes, incomes didn't go up as fast as house prices, but interest rates plummeted and offset it. No one ever talks about it. But property taxes, which I voted against the referendum, and property taxes go up easily for me, $1,000 per year recently. And the property taxes are something that are the killer because interest rates have offset. And so if you're locked in, now the problem is interest rates are going up. But that doesn't deal with this thing. It's just the way people screw up in perceptions here. Well, that was the number one, and I'll leave it at that. The thing about, like, how would the water level be raised? Like Candy Cove, this is a story from the 50s. I mean, I've been around since the 60s. I was coming out here in 61. I was a little young then. But Candy Cove, I was told by the people we were visiting, water was draining out of the lake, and it really was. We could play volleyball down at the shore way out. I mean, it's far. and they dumped a lot of clay into Candy Cove, and the water came up. And then you have to put in the drainage up to Jeffers because of the one man-made screw-up puts up another one, or, trade-offs. So there aren't magic bullets. So drain tiling, I think, was when the word pipe is used, is that farmer's drain tiling. And because how would that be done? I wouldn't want clay or fabric or anything like that put in, and is it truly just something as simple as, yes, we'll adjust the pipes?
You have about a minute.
I'll leave it at that. There's too many, and I can't read all my handwriting that fast.
I would encourage you, though, to your remaining or lingering thoughts, send a note to Casey and the staff.
I'll go through that.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and I've had wonderful emails back, so thank you. If you're the one who is, I'll look at who they're from.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Who else would like to approach the podium and address the Planning Commission? Make sure the button is green.
Button's green, okay. Lucy Burling, Post Office Box 57, Savage, Minnesota. I looked on Facebook and see some comments, and I'm kind of the first ones here. The Burlings were the first ones here for a very long time, so I could really look at what I was seeing. We often hear about preserving the small town character of our community, but the reality is that our area has changed over the years. When I was young, County Road 42 and 21 were a 2-lane gravel road. The change is definitely cleared. The Burling family established this farm in 1864, and for generations it's been a working dairy farm rooted in this community. The decision to sell this property is not made lightly. After 162 years of family ownership and connection to this land, however, farming within the city limits has been more difficult. Rising land values have led to property taxes, and changes in the water flow from the nearby development have caused flooding that damaged our pasture, which reduced grazing for our young heifers, and then that affected our operation. The land will continue to serve the community as it is developed into housing for people at different stages of life with a variety of needs and lifestyles. This land has meant a great deal to our family for generations, and we trust in its next chapter it will continue to benefit the community of Prior Lake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a simple question. Denise Scatto. I'm at 4372 Chestnut Lane Northeast. I'm in the neighborhood that will struggle with this, but understand it. One of my biggest worries is actually Pike Lake Road. In 42, there was a apartment development that happened right across 42 that people are crossing. It's dangerous there. It's not the best intersection. There is only a single lane both ways, so even to turn right out of there, you can't. So it's starting to back up. If they are proposing, kind of this Fountain Hill to be the main in, that's going to lead right up to that Pike Lake. Is there any plans or thoughts about potentially changing that to a light to have it safer?
So just so I'm clear, the intersection of Pike Lake Trail and County Road 42?
Yeah, it's not the best.
Yeah, so there are plans, again, they're development driven. So when the other portion of the farm develops there, that intersection will expand at that time. But until then, they're working within the confines of what right of way we do have
I see.
there.
Okay. I worry about that, so.
Just a quick question. Sandy, were you able to catch our last guest's name? Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners, staff, Pulte. A little bit of background.
Is the green
Live
button?
in the Trillium Cove.
Is the green button on?
Oh, the green is on.
Okay, great.
There we go. How's that?
Or you can raise it up a little bit. There you go.
How's that? Okay. A little background. I live in the Trillium Cove community. I was one of the original residents. And I'll start by saying I love my community. I love Trillium Cove. Pulte did a fantastic job, I think, laying it out, incorporating the park. The quality of the construction superintendents, the salespeople, they were all fabulous. I've now been there 5 years, and I have been, reluctantly, the president, treasurer, and secretary of the HOA. It's not a highly sought-after group of positions, I can tell you that. I guess we have been fully staffed as a board, but not a lot of people want to get involved with it. But I think, unless anybody objects, I think PUD and HOA are kind of synonymous. PUDs have HOAs, correct?
As a city of Prior Lake, we do not require the PUD to have an HOA unless there's common amenities that require common maintenance, such as monument signs or private parks or things like that. If there is none of those private amenities, the city would not require an HOA.
Okay, so the Marlow Ridge would be an HOA? I'm not against HOAs, but I'm only asking just to make sure that my comments are consistent with a similar development. Okay, so I didn't hear an answer to that, but I think it is going to be an HOA.
Yeah, I mean, we try to avoid a back and forth with the applicant or staff. If you could direct your questions to the Planning Commission, and then they can assemble them and get all the answers at.
You want me to speak to the committee?
Please.
Okay. All right. So
We'll explore and examine that question.
Okay.
And get back to you.
Okay, well, it'll become, I guess, obvious, fine. So I made some notes here while I was sitting there, and I brought some notes, but I was surprised to hear them say that the first occupancy would be in April of 2027, barely, not even a year out. That's possible? With crops planted and growing? You really, I mean, that's a lot, that lot's got to happen in that short amount of time with city reviews and approvals and developers agreements and things like that, correct?
We'll note the question, and we can have Mr. Hoyer address that after you're done.
Well, what I'd like to ask of the Planning Commission is, what is the process, the visibility, and the timing for the development agreement that will govern the contract between the City of Prior Lake on behalf of residents and Pulte Homes? What is that timing? What will be the visibility to this same group of people or this same audience potentially?
Yeah, that is a question for staff. Casey, are you prepared for that one?
Yeah, I can now, or I can at the end of the comment period.
We'll address it at the end of your comments.
Okay. The reason that I ask that is the way it had worked with Trillium Cove was the city and Pulte entered into a development agreement, did a PUD and entered into a development agreement, and Pulte proceeded to sell homes when we got, let's say, 80 to 90% of the people occupying homes. The process requires that Pulte turn that community over to the homeowners, and the homeowners then receive the governing documents, the financials, and are authorized to create their own homeowners elected board of directors. So at that point, the community is almost complete. But the people that have moved there, including the board members, probably weren't involved in this process from this stage on.
So your question presupposes the establishment of an HOA, correct?
Yes, and my purpose for coming here was in hopes of finding out how to get our experience as a homeowners association in front of and into the city staff so that the types of issues that we inherited don't happen to Marlow Ridge.
Yeah, I appreciate the question and the thoughtfulness, and so we'll have to work out the mechanics of that. And inherent in the question, at least in my mind right now, so it's sort of chewing on all the permutations of this, is I'm not sure what's in bounds and what's out of bounds in terms of the HOA voice guiding legal conformities. So that's what we'll have to explore that.
So I'll give you an example. And I should be, in the interest of full disclosure, I spent 15 years of my life as a director of real estate and development in North America for a very large manufacturing company. So I've been down the process of land acquisitions, planning, development, construction, closeouts, warranties, escrows, all those types of things. And what I learned in inheriting the community and inheriting all the documents was that there wasn't enough thought and enough process about the end of the road, the last mile, we'll call it. So when, let's say, 80 or 85% of the homes are occupied and the last ones are under construction, Pulte is moving on to their next project. And a lot of loose ends are left, and there wasn't, despite my efforts to confirm that there was, or hope that there wasn't a good process within the city or with Pulte to close out the project, to audit whether or not the two parties to the contract, being the city and Pulte, both met their obligations of that contract.
So just a point of order, so it's about 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm going to take about 15 seconds, so you'll still have 1 minute. And
I get to reclaim my time like the
30,
like the
yes. Yes.
senators do?
Yeah, welcome to the Hill.
Yeah.
But so my overall sense and expectation and request for staff is that everything we talk about will be transparent. That's the way we roll. Right?
Transparency isn't an issue with me. I don't believe there's a transparency issue.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying it's because it's important to us and me as chair of this body. I have every expectation and confidence that staff will, at the appropriate mile markers, right? So beginning of the project, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, information that is being requested or in terms of closing out the process, the staff will do everything they know to do within our legal parameters, right, as guided by the city attorney and perhaps, other authorities. Will make sure that we're communicating thoughtfully and timely with any member of the community, and especially HOAs. So I'm going to pause there and then let you finish, and then Casey can address some of your points.
Maybe I can simplify what I'm trying to accomplish here is, when we inherited the community from Pulte and from the city essentially and said, here, you're now responsible for this. You have obligations to maintain common areas. You have obligations that the city and Pulte agreed you would take on as an HOA when you took over the community. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But we learned that there were flaws in that, and I'll give you an example. The developer's agreement specifically called out landscape plans, numbers, pages, documents. Those plans were very specific in many, many ways. We saw a lot tonight about trees. The city goes to great lengths to measure trees, caliper trees, require the replacement of trees, etc. No one at the city or Pulte audited those landscape plans when the community was turned over, before the community was turned over to us. That became my job, and only because I had some experience in it did I do it, and found many missing trees, many dead trees, many denials of warranty that weren't in accordance with the landscape plans that called out the warranty requirements. I personally had to take on and file a legal action against Pulte because the city would not even meet with me. I had to appeal to a city council member to get the city manager to even take a meeting. So what I would suggest is I would like to get a commitment from city staff to sit down with me and take advantage of what we experienced in order to complete the project that other parties agreed to.
I think we'd be fine with that. The issue that I'm having right now, and I'm trying to be respectful of your remaining time, is that a lot of this is based on supposition. Legally, there is no HOA right now that I'm aware of. And so I will encourage staff to connect with you and clarify the legal authorities and the timing that's involved, because without an established legal authority to provide appropriate oversight, this conversation is, and I hear you and I respect it, but it really is moot at this point in time. So I'm going to give you 30 more seconds.
Okay. What I would like to achieve, if at all possible, would be to see the new development agreement for Marlow Ridge incorporate some requirements that would protect the HOA from receiving an incomplete project and being subjected to potential costs, large costs, for work that wasn't completed, and that the city would not enforce their contractual rights upon Pulte to complete those things.
I think that's fair and reasonable. So your time has ended. Very, very thoughtful comments. Thank you so much. And Casey, what part of that would you like to address? And then we'll move on to the next guest.
Yeah, so it's my belief, and perhaps it's a question for the applicant after the public hearing. I believe they're having an HOA. I just don't understand if it would be an HOA over the entire development or just perhaps the twin home areas. But the applicant did mention the no mow, no plow. So that to me tells me there will be an HOA. The city enters into a development contract with the developer, not with the homeowners association, and that is done as part of the final plat approval process. So this is a multi-phase development. Each phase of this development, whether that's 3 or 4, will have its own development agreement. In that development agreement is security for all of the public improvements as part of the project. So anything that will be public in the future, whether that's a sidewalk, a street, curb, sewer, water, storm, that's all secured. We have security for that. We have letters of credit and bonds or other things to secure that. The more private amenity space, so whether that's a certain landscape type, it may be shown in the landscape plan, but it's not part of what the city reviews or requires. We require the tree replacement plan. We collect a security for that. And our agreement is with the developer. Our agreement does not transfer to the homeowners association. Our agreement is with the developer until the project is completed and accepted.
Great, thank you, Casey. Who else would like to approach the Planning Commission?
Can I ask one question before I leave?
I'd ask that you email it to Casey because your time is up.
Okay, I'll be in touch with Mr. McCabe then.
Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name.
Hi, Emily Gores. I'm a resident of Prairie Lake at 14699 Landau Lane, Northeast. Our house is right off of Coachman. I addressed the planning committee last and actually had some email communication with Casey during last, and I really appreciate the addressing of our concerns from the last meeting as well as my emails to you, Casey. I was the resident that asked about the impact to our school district. I promise the question that I have actually connects the two issues. I got up and spoke around the concern I had around Fountain Hills and 21, which proved to be in the future a potential problematic intersection. I live off of Coachman Lane. I'm very curious in the study for traffic, if there was any study done relative to the traffic that this development would push down Coachman Lane, as that is the only trafficked intersection to go left southbound on 21. So I know that based on what you guys shared, there wouldn't be a need for any change at Carriage Hills Parkway and 21, but with an added neighborhood and this many units, curious to understand what it would do to Coachman Lane and what it could potentially do to my neighbors. Often are putting out signs to have people slow down that road as their kids are out playing in our nice big front yards. So would be very interested in understanding what the impact of this development would do on traffic on Coachman Lane, and specifically for the intent to use a controlled traffic light to turn left on southbound 21. And that intersection hopefully shouldn't change because we have a school there, and it's there for the crosswalk to the school. And I'll connect this to my concerns around the school. I'd asked Casey around the change in the tax base from residential or from commercial to residential in this plan. And I understand it is only 10 acres of a delta. And Casey explained to me that there are some open opportunities with some annexation of Spring Lake Township for us to develop more commercial properties that would feed our tax base, that would be a commercial tax base. You may all be very well aware that our school districts are facing financial crisis to the tune of multiple millions of dollars in funding cuts every year. Yes, we have declining enrollment, but the state of our schools and the underfunding of those schools will continue to erode at the enrollment. People won't see this as a destination district any longer. And so if we reduce the commercial opportunity, the tax base here, where are we going to find it? Where will we offset the reduction in that tax base from residential to commercial? Casey explained to me that our target is a ratio of 80-20, 80% residential, 20% commercial. We're well below 10% as it is. And so if we don't have already on the plan books of other commercial development in our town that will increase that ratio and offset the changes that we're making, just as it relates to this rezoning, what are we doing to the impact of an already struggling financial situation for our school districts? So just want to encourage you all as you work through your planning process that is front and center in your mind. And while it looks like this land and the elevation that you're proposing, yes, it's harder to develop from a commercial standpoint. We're also providing variances for, having homes closer to the street so we can fit more lots in it to sell more. Just what are we doing to the impact of that commercial residential base? What are we doing to the flow of traffic through our neighborhoods? I'm a resident of 22 years, Fountain Hills and Carriage Hills, and I am just imploring that we take the study of this very carefully and make sure that, just because it's what works for a developer isn't necessarily, what may be in the best interests of our community. I will also say that I know that homes in our neighborhood are not selling for what the proposed starting price is for a townhome across the street. So just a consideration as it relates to the prices of the homes that are proposed as well. Those may struggle to sell at those prices given a lot of factors, but the surrounding community, the surrounding homes are not valued close to that either. So just the fact that they're new and also just interest rates, just would consider, would those, does the demand actually meet, and does this plan meet the demand and the ability for not even families, but some new home buyers as well as older community residents? Does it fit their financial capabilities within that? So just I'll cede my time over back to the committee, but just would like to have you make sure that the community's hearing those are things that are on our neighborhood's mind, and have you consider those as you evaluate all of these exceptions that are being asked to develop this land. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for the thoughtful commentary. So at least two items stick out for me. Casey or Nick, I'll ask you to comment briefly on the issue of Coachman Lane and the controlled light, and then just to affirm, Emily, everything that you said. I've been here since 2002, and the balance of commercial versus residential has been a perpetual guiding question that we're still trying to get right. So I assure you, it hasn't fallen off the radar screen. Casey?
Thank you, Chair. So for the Coachman Lane, that was not included in the traffic study. I don't know if the applicant would be prepared to address, any potential impact on there and turning movements. I'm not a traffic engineer, but my hunch is, if the residential only portions of this development aren't requiring signal changes at 21 and Fountain Hills, there's probably, less to no impact. I don't want to say no impact, less of an impact at Coachman, but perhaps the applicant can answer that. In regards to the loss of commercial question, I get it. Like we mentioned in our report, I have been here almost 15 years, and we don't re-guide and rezone commercial property for residential purposes. The city of Prior Lake made that mistake many times 25, 30 years ago when you look at certain neighborhoods that were guided for commercial development, and then we ask ourselves, why is only 8% of our tax base from commercial industrial? It's because we rezoned 400 acres over the last 30 years. We do have about 500 acres guided for commercial industrial development. It's not all ready to be served. It's going to take utility extensions. That number is probably much greater than what demand study would say we need, but we like to provide options. We like to be in different locations of the community, different types of commercial as well. So we're working on it. We're not there yet. And then the last thing I would add is this area, it would be a loss of commercial on paper, but this property has sat here for sale for 25 years, and the developer is proposing to construct Fountain Hills, which has been a huge driver, a huge reason why no commercial has happened in that corner because of the cost. So whoever buys that property to the north is essentially getting a free collector road built by this developer that they would not have to pay for and they would not have to dedicate right away for.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, because the hour is getting late, but in my mind, I'm just one of 7 planning commissioners. I think it is the question that Prior Lake has to figure out in the next 3 to 5 years. How are we going to achieve a smart balance of residential and commercial that honors our legacy? When I first moved here, the mantra was Prior Lake, a wonderful place to call home. And it is. It's a great place to call home. And the economic reality suggests that we have to do something different. We have to do something different in terms of making sure we guide a better balance, a sustainable balance of commercial and residential. So.
Hi, Olivia Sutton, 14347 Enclave Court Northwest in Prior Lake. And so I live in the Jeffers development, and I just wanted to find out a little bit more information. I was emailing a little bit with Casey about the proposed intersection development at Fountain Hills and 21. So I know we talked about kind of pushing that down until there's more businesses developed for the business park. But I know, considering in the Jeffers development, we've got the brand new apartment that's just been built, and there's another one going up now with like another 800 or so units. That pushes a lot more traffic out into Fountain Hills, and it's really hard to turn left, go back into Shakopee from my road now. There's a lot of accidents at the intersection, and I know we didn't really hear about the traffic study that was conducted there. So I was wondering if you could hear more information about the traffic study at Fountain Hills 21 that was for the current traffic, and then if they were also considering the new traffic that will come from the apartments in Jeffers in addition to the new houses and the business park, and if that can be evaluated sooner than just when the business park comes along, but maybe when some of that traffic starts coming about from the new housing that'll be next year too.
Intersection. Carriage Hills 21.
And I will also mention too, the new apartments, if you turn onto 42 to going west, you can only turn right to get back to the really big intersection of 41 and 42 and 21, you can't turn left there. So anybody that's coming out of, say if I wanted to leave my development and go out that way, you can't turn left, you only can turn right. So it just kind of makes more people come out into the Fountain Hills 21 exit.
So I'll take a stab at this, and I may have to have Alliant comment on this as well. High level, yes, counts were looked at all legs of that intersection. That is the Fountain Hills on the west side of 21 as well. As far as they use numbers that they count during the study, so they actually put up cameras and get traffic counts. So those are the numbers utilized in this study or the model. And what they are telling us is without commercial being developed there, just the development that's in front of us today, it would not meet warrants at that time for a signal. It would just be the same stop condition. Now Pulte will be adding a turn lane to go into the east side, the east development, since it doesn't exist today. And then once the commercial does fully build out, based on the uses they assumed, those can change. Approximately 2030 or 2037 building scenarios would dictate an improvement at that intersection, which would likely be a signal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think you, Olivia, you can anticipate some follow-up from staff in the coming days and
Can I
weeks.
ask a clarification? Can I ask a clarification on
Sure,
this?
yeah.
Just for clarity, Nick. So the traffic study from what you shared with us earlier, that was looking at everything that is east of 21. I believe what she was just asking about was is that taking into account all of the other development that's happening on the west side of 21 into the enclave development on the other side of Fountain Hills in terms of what's coming at it from both sides onto 21?
Correct. So it did not look at those developments, but what it did is they put a camera on the east side of Fountain Hills.
Yep.
They counted the actual traffic. So
Okay.
they used those data.
But in terms of with this new apartment coming online and everything else,
It would have,
those would have been cars that it would have counted.
Depending on the timing of when the counters were out, it probably counted the existing building there now, not the one that's going in the future.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Azinger, 14565 Surrey Lane Northeast over in Carriage Hills. Beautiful walk. Thank you to the Veerlings for having had that farm for as long as they have. Looking at the plan that was sent out with the notification, one of the concerns I think a lot of us have is that a five-letter word? Trees. Why is it that developers come in and rip out all the trees only to put trees back in? And that's where I'm looking at the sheet that was sent out, and there is along Carriage Hills, especially between Carriage Lane and Surrey Lane, there says outlot H, and there's F, G, and H on those. Are those actually, there's beautiful trees along there. Because it's an outlot, are they going to be ripped out as part of that 1,300 that are going to be taken out? Because that's where I can understand trees do have to go because of the nature of the land and where the houses are going to go. But the question then comes down to why do so many have to go? As far as keeping that green space and the conservation efforts.
Yep, I believe Outlet H is located on the southern portion of the development commissioners along Carriage Hills, and yes, those trees will all be removed or are proposed to be removed for the construction, street connections and house pads.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just
Yes.
before I go on, there is one on the exhibit or the screen in front of you. There is a piece of property under that dips down to Carriage Hills, that curved piece. Is that
Yes.
what you're talking? Because
Yes.
that is not part of the development property, so those trees
those
should
will
not be.
stay?
Those
Awesome.
trees in that area should not be impacted.
Thank you for that confirmation, appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next guest.
Mike Vierling, 13985 Pike Lake Trail, Parr Lake. I should say I farmed this land since I was, well, born on the farm since kindergarten. 9th grade, start really taking it over, and now my son is taking it over. The biggest problem this farm really had was the wetland on 21 corner, or Carriage Hills. Carriage Hills came in, they put a pipe into the wetland. It was a quick take. We had nothing to say. It came in, it flooded that pasture out. We had, before that pipe came in, we grazed our cattle on that. That kept the feed costs down. Over the years, when they put the pipe in, my cattle got stuck. We pulled how many cows out of there? And we had our young stock in there. We had calves. The cows were pregnant and get their calves on that site. And when those cows came in, you probably don't know the cow situation, but they was in water. The cows came in, our young stock, our replacements had mastitis. We had getting to be having no replacement cows. That took my dairy business out of business. And then one day, the milk trucker came and said, Mike, we can't pick your milk up no more. You're out of there's no other dairy farms getting to be close to you anymore. So I was done. So we had to make a decision, and we did. We got some beef cattle to keep us going. But I do want to say, I want to thank everybody in Carriage Hills for seeing a cow that got out on their yard and give me a call. And for the tractors on the road, you stayed behind us. And some people that wanted to go on the shoulder and you couldn't wait, but it is getting kind of dangerous out there. And you're talking about traffic study right now. Common sense. You're going to have 500 cars more a day. You can figure, what do you have, let's say 300 homes, 2 per home at least. That's 600 homes, 600 cars. You take 21 right now, it's 7 in the morning. They're backed up. You go on 42, try to get to 21 at 4 o'clock. The turn lane, there is no turn lane left. They're out on 42. It's just common sense. You can do all your traffic studies and all you want. You're just going to know there's going to be more traffic. I do care for every person that lives around the neighborhood. We had, over the years, many plans on this property. Right now, this is number M plan. Start with number A. And I got nothing to say, but this is the plan that they say it's going to work, and so we got to. And we still are going to get commercial property, so that's what we need in this. We got to get the taxes down in this. It's killing you. So we need more commercial, and at least we're getting some. But like I said, I do concern about everybody who lives here, and I do got an issue. We did a survey, and one of the houses, they got a shed on it and a wall. And that needs to be cleared up, because I am concerned about every person who's next to it. If I own that house, I would be concerned. What's going to happen? Do I got to take my shed down, or what's going to happen? So that needs to be issued. Another issue I got, you're talking about the stormwater. You're talking about everything about the stormwater on the site. What happens after the site? Let's take a look on the edge of the corner. Well, let's go back to the traffic. Traffic control. Pike Lake Trail in 42 intersection. I did not like that comment. Let's wait until the next development. I don't like that. Is a dangerous intersection right now. They're going to put that road in behind Holiday. Look right on the map, right past Holiday, into the new development. What is there? There's a road that goes right into the development. How many cars are going to go turn on Pike Lake to get to that one, to avoid 21? All that whole side, cars are going to come in. That Pike Lake Trail intersection is going to be really busy. And right now, there is a lot of accidents on that. I hear them. I'm in the house, and I hear bang, and I know right where it is. Go look at the police report and see how many accidents are on Pike Lake Trail right now. You'd be amazed how many got hit. So that's the biggest concern I got about that. Now, drainage on that corner, right there, right? You got the button right there. Where is that water all going to? I heard it's going to go into the townhomes, right there. We had a problem back in, I don't know, 10 years ago. We got a big rain. It could not handle it. So what did I do? I put a berm up and I moved it up ahead and went into the pond that goes in front of the townhomes. It's a no-no, but it worked. So, but I had to fix it because the backyards were getting water right up to the backyards of the houses. So I had to fix it. It was my fault, they said. So that's what I did to get by. But I'm worried about, because I heard an easement has to go on that property there. And now they say maybe an easement, maybe not easement. I don't got the right 100% answer. And I don't want to come back to get the development done. And whoever owns that house there is going to say, I got water now because of this development. So I'm trying to protect that person right now. So that has an issue. Another issue is the big pond. They said they're going to raise it. How are they going to raise it? Are they going to put dirt in the bottom to raise it up 4 feet, or are they just going to push all that water into it so it goes up higher? And I think, how high is that berm going to be on that one side? Because right now, there's no houses there, and I got water from fence post on 21 all the way to my crop field right now, and there's no houses. And I don't understand. I don't believe the story about, well, they say you're going to put more ponds in so you're going to have less water. They said that to me on Carriage Hills, and look what happened to me. So I don't believe that story. So another issue I have.
Mike, you have about a minute.
Okay, this last issue I got. The big water wetland. It's going to go, how is it going to get to Pike Lake Trail? When it goes off their property, it's going to go on 27 acres. Where is it going to go? Is it going to go this way? So I'm going to lose more wetlands on my property yet that I still have? Or what's going to happen to Pike Lake when it goes across 42? That was my concern. I'm concerned about other people who owns other property. You just can't say, well, we're going to contain all this water on this property, but we got to say, where is it going to go? Who's it going to affect afterwards? So my main issue was, you got to figure out about that survey that was done. Pike Lake Trail, I didn't like that. I mean, that Pike Lake Trail intersection, and that was not a good answer. We wait till it gets new development in here. No, you don't want somebody to be dead and say, well, then now we got to fix it. We don't want that issue. And then that big wetland, how is it going to get down to Pike Lake without doing any more damage? Because I can tell you right now, my old farm pipes are busted, are gone, done, completely gone when that new water came in. It just blew them apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, I'm going to suggest that any responses that you have, that you communicate those via email and or in a private meeting with Mr. Vierling. Our next guest.
Hi, I'm Ralph Wagner. I live 4116 Broham Boulevard, Northeast. That's going to be a tough one to follow. I've been living here in Prior Lake over 20 years. One of the things I'd like to talk about first is we talk about Carriage Parkway or Highway. You said, well, we'll put up a crosswalk or two. Crosswalks don't save lives. If you ever tried to watch the kids cross the street, traffic's getting quick up there, okay? So just remember that crosswalks don't save lives. They're just suggestions today. We did this map up here where you got the minimum density. How much of that is the wetlands in there, and what is the real number? I think you said we're about 7 houses, or what is it, 7 per deal? But with half of it being, we'll call it Lake Vierling for right now, okay? Yeah, I think the number's a lot higher, so we're going to have issues with parking with your townhouses and complex there. I really don't want to look out my backyard and see them either. I'd rather see them someplace else, like your neighborhood. And the last problem I have here is we have another water drainage on Carriage Lane, or Carriage Hills, that is on the south side of the road, right across from there. How much problems are we going to have with water in there for extra storm water and stuff like that? I'm really not for a medium density. Low density, I think we can work with. Putting medium density in there is just greedy and problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next guest.
Chris Brune at 4364 Chestnut.
I don't know that we caught your name.
Oh, yep, Chris Brune.
Thanks.
Yep. So just one comment. I'm just wondering why the plat is having, as it is now, it's going from the Carriage Hills neighborhood, low density, then to townhomes, then to the duplexes, as opposed to a gradient where it's more, the low density in the Carriage Hills neighborhood to the low medium density, which would be the the duplexes, and then to the high medium, which would be the townhomes. And that factors into the parking too. There's going to be more people going to those the six-pack buildings there, the townhomes, rather than the duplexes. So that's pushing more of that parking traffic into possibly south of Carriage Hills Parkway, as others have mentioned. So yeah, that's my only comment question is I don't know why it's not working in a gradient up to that office park there. I've worked in construction for years, and that's kind of more the standard build out is low up to high as opposed to kind of jumping around. Yep, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Casey, could you address that maybe quickly, and then when Mr. Hoyer comes back, maybe you could address that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a good question. They can, this is what the developer proposed. This is what they feel works for their neighborhood and the flow into certain areas. We don't have a requirement that if you have a mixed density that it needs to be on a specific side of the development, but it's a fair question.
Thanks. Next guest. Please clearly state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Bob Zabel, 4421 Foxhound Court Northeast in Prior Lake. My questions are pretty minuscule to a lot of things that have been brought up, and one thing I did want to do is show a little respect to the rear lanes. They're kind of getting pushed out with the growth of this city and whatnot, and seeing the turnover and how the land has changed, so kudos to you for putting up with it as long as you guys have. One question I have for the infrastructure that's going to be put in, what kind of interruptions or anything like that are we going to look at as residents there now when the new stuff does come in? Are there going to be interruptions? Are we going to see any increases in our taxes due to some of the new sewer and road work or whatnot done to that? Next question I have is with the townhomes that have been brought up that are going to be along Carriage Hills Parkway. Is there going to be trees put along that partway, a fence along those townhomes? And for the city as well, we had a lot of trees that were removed in the middle of the boulevard. Are those going to be replaced? That will help set off this new development as well too, if some of those trees are going to be replaced. So that's really all I got.
Casey, would you take a stab at that? So I have anticipated disruptions, tax-based implications. That's not only a question for this body, but for the community at large and the city council. And then tree berming.
I'll let Nick handle the tree berming question in the median. There should be no cost to the taxpayer. So as a city, it's development pays for development. So the developer will construct all of the utilities, all of the streets, put in all the traffic signs, do all the plantings. There will be no cost to the taxpayer for this development. Once everything is done and tested and accepted by staff and the city council, then it becomes a city maintenance project moving forward. So no cost. There should be no interruptions to service with the utility connections or any work like that. I don't know on the fence question for the townhome. That would not be something that the city requires that a fence be installed, because it's not separating residential from commercial use. It's residential to residential, so there would not be a fence requirement. They could certainly plant one if they chose to. And then maybe Director Monsrud can handle the boulevard trees. I'm not familiar with that.
Regarding the trees that have been removed on the median at Carriage Hills, we do and we don't put them back. It varies depending on availability when we have trees that we can put somewhere. Usually our parks take priority of replacing trees before we put them in boulevards, but we have a giant list, as you could imagine, throughout the city of tree replacement and boulevards, both center boulevards and side boulevards as well. So ideally, yes, but I don't have a timing on that.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Casey. Our next guest.
Hello, Lynn Sloan, 4367 Fox Hunt Court. I also want to say thank you to the Veerlings. Bobby in general taught my son some great work ethic as he was growing up, and I just want to thank them for affording him the opportunity to do some farming when he was younger, and he's now a police officer, and helped corral some of those cows over the years. So lived in the community for 30 years, love it, and feel very grateful that we've had as long as we've had without further development. My couple areas are really around the traffic. I am one of those clusters of walkers. We walk the Parkway 2 times a day with our dogs, and there it is quite dangerous at certain times, and there will be a lot more traffic. I would say in general, the parking that was set up for the park is not sufficient, and it is a blind turn. So something needs to be incorporated into your plans to have proper parking maybe in some space of that new area that's being developed to get rid of the Carriage Hills Parkway park spaces. It's very dangerous, and people illegally park and get tickets. So the speeding, the intersections that you're going to be building out, some of these new roads, you really need to do some further inspection about how you're going to improve those intersections, because it will be dangerous, not only for the drivers, but we have a lot of pedestrians on that Carriage Hills Parkway, including people that are riding e-bikes, scooters, and all sorts of other things that may or may not be on those paths or should be on those paths. So keep in mind not just traffic patterns, but people patterns, and you should be making some assessments on that. So that's my main area of concern. I would say the other piece that I'm a little confused on is the easement setback as we're walking and using that parkway for wellness and, just time with our families and our dogs. What am I going to be looking at, and will there be, like, somebody's backyard is going to be butting up to the path? Like, is it going to be, and I know there's questions on trees, or like some kind of privacy fence so that there's still more of a natural feel to your parkway versus, backing up to a yard and having a dog run out at you when you're walking your dog? And finally, the last question I have is, it sounds like it's going to start next summer, which I think is aggressive because all the plumbing and streets and everything have to go in. is the timing of this development. When would it be wrapped up? So from start to best guess estimate of when we would have a full, complete community, I'd like to know that too.
Thank you. Go ahead, Casey.
Attempt to answer some of those. I will let the developer discuss timing of the project, but I would imagine it is 3 to 4 years at a minimum to be completed. As far as the trail on Carriage Hills Parkway, this might not be the best exhibit, but the street existing trail is going to remain. So you will be walking at the back of the attached townhome units on the west side of the development, and in the rear yards and side yards of these properties in the single-family detached. There was comments on the parking for the Carriage Hills Park. That is not, there are no plans as part of this plan to do any changes or any additional parking for the park that is south of the property.
Thank you. Our next guest, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Dan Foster, 4402 Fox Hunt Court, Prior Lake. First of all, Mr. Chairman, Commission, and staff, thank you for your time. Outstanding job by staff in their presentations tonight. Very informative, and Casey, thanks for your email exchanges as well. Very, very helpful. I guess the Fox Hunt Court team is ganging up on you here tonight, but we've all been there for 30-some years now, and like my neighbors, want to give a heartfelt hello and thank you to Mike and the Vierling family. My kid is good friends with Bobby, has hung out with Mike, and I want to just tell you, here's how wonderful that family is. When my kid had a birthday, I think, Mike, you might even remember, he was maybe 4 years old. And Mike took the time with his family to bring his tractor and a trailer and a bunch of hay bales to give kids rides. So thank you for that, and thank you for being wonderful neighbors. So what I think you're hearing in the last two meetings that I've been at now is a connection between the density that's being proposed for this neighborhood, meaning the amount of people and cars, in conjunction with an existing problem with vehicles, intersections, and speed of vehicles. And I don't think it's a stretch to take what you're hearing from the community tonight and previous meeting and really come to a conclusion that it's going to get worse with this much more activity, these many more people. Not saying that the development is something we shouldn't do. I think it was inevitable. 30 years ago, we knew this was going to happen, and it took a long time to get here. And I think for the most part, the plan is sound as a residential community. I'm not aware of any life cycle communities in Prior Lake like this. If there is one, I'd like to hear about it, but I'm very curious, though, that the segregation that exists within the community historically is done in separate neighborhoods. You don't really see this kind of mix. I think it's an interesting idea, but with the prices that have been proposed, I'll be a little surprised to see how well it does. But I wish the Pulte Group success. The question I would have for the Pulte folks is, and maybe it's proprietary information, but how did you come up with the mix of townhouses, the percentage of townhouses versus single-family homes and twin homes in terms of coming up with the total number of units by size or type? Because I think that speaks directly to the density question and concern that people have had. My last comments will be just to tack on to the traffic and safety issues again. I would ask maybe that the committee, the commission, make a request of the safety committee that Nick works with to take a really good, hard, close look at what's going to happen beyond modeling. The folks that have been here for the last two meetings talking about the traffic concerns, these are real life, personal experiences every day. And I think it's going to get a whole lot worse. And I think it would be helpful to have some really good information beyond modeling that would suggest that more traffic improvements and potentially, and I know that's not for this group to come up with, but potentially a reduction in the speed limit on Carriage Hills Parkway. You saw some numbers that are pretty telling. I think they're even worse than that, about the number of speeding vehicles and how fast they're going. One of my neighbors spoke last month about the excessive speeds we see with these vehicles. I respect that there's an opinion about the cars will slow down once there's intersections. I'm hard pressed to believe that that'll happen because Carriage Hills Parkway is a divided roadway and people tend to use it as a racetrack. And we've seen some incredibly excessive speeds. The Surrey Lane intersection, speaker earlier talked about how that's a blind intersection. So if you're on Surrey Lane exiting onto Carriage Hills Parkway, the traffic coming from the west, from your left, is partially blind. And so sometimes those cars are going very fast, and by the time you start to pull out, they're on top of you. So due diligence on the traffic studies and really trying to avoid someone getting hurt as the traffic increases with this density of people. And the last thing I'll say is the pitch Bob made about the trees. They did go through and take down a lot of trees last year and the year before, I believe it was, and much of it was from Emerald Ash Borer. They took down most, if not all, of the ash trees. I would like the commission to consider putting those back or directing staff to try to put those back. The park can be beautiful, but it's pretty barren with all those trees that were taken out. And maybe not make it part of this project, but a future project for the city. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan, before you come back up, is there anyone else in the audience? Sure.
I am going to it's so quick.
Let's-
They answer my two questions. I don't remember hearing them answer my two questions.
Yeah, so
I know, and I'll move, but.
with my direction, Casey will be in touch with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the answer was at the end. It's like everyone else, you're answering their questions right away. You're doing dialogue. I was the first. And you did.
Actually, I'm going to stop you because that's not true. It's not factual. So Casey, please make a note. Thank you. Next guest.
Hi, Rihanna Saxon, Bridal Ridge Trail, Prior Lake. So one other guest did ask a question, but I didn't get full clarity. So given that that is farmland, there's going to have to be like sewer, water, gas, electric, everything run in there. Are we, the taxpayers, going to be stuck with all of that, those up costs? Like, are we going to have to pay for all of that, given that there's none of that in that land at this point to build this huge new development? And also, you know, we've been talking about traffic and intersections, and I agree with everything everybody's saying, because all night long, all I hear is like the racing of cars up and down and up and down. And I can hear the crashes on that, 21 and 42. And I don't know about anybody else, but leaving for work in the morning is a nightmare. Going down 21 and having that traffic backed up into 21, trying to get onto 169. And then once you're on 169, you're just stuck. And what we're not really saying is that, say if you have 13, you've got 18, you've got 21, everything funnels down to 169. We can't widen 169 because of the waterways there. And if engineers did try to structurally build something that was going to be wider, it would cost billions of dollars and take years for that construction. All you got to do is look at like 494 over by like France and 100, nightmare. So, my concern is like, how are we going to just keep building and building? Because I've lived here for 20-something years. And I mean, the amount of homes that have been built has been like off the hook. And I know Mr. Jeffers, he actually gave all that property to the city, and asked that nobody would build on it because he was worried about overpopulation. And of course, you know, his wishes weren't respected, and there's been thousands of homes built there now. And there was a lot of things that were promised that never came to fruition on that property. And I guess my other question is, I think you made a lovely comment about, you know, moving to Prior Lake because this is such a beautiful city, and I love living here. I treasure it. It's beautiful. It's definitely changed, but there's still been an aesthetic that I think, you know, I want to hold on to that aesthetic with, you know, respecting the environment, like watching one of my favorite things is like all the egrets and the herons and all the swans and the snow geese and things that come into this beautiful community, and it makes your heart like feel different than, you know, if you're living in the city. And I don't want us to lose that. And I would really like for you to take into consideration, I've been to other communities around the country that are lake communities, and they have an aesthetic, you know, like our little city has like a little bit of an, you know, old-fashioned kind of a feeling, very homey, and you go for ice cream or you go to the farmer's market, or I just don't want us to lose that. And I think it would be really great if there was some sort of design potential so that we don't end up looking like Burnsville. Sorry if anybody's from Burnsville. I don't want to look like Burnsville. I don't want to look like Savage, you know? And I mean, I think it's great that we get some commercial property in, but I think, like, let's just say, and I'm not saying we should look like Edina, but Edina has an aesthetic. They want a certain look, and the people that come in to buy and do commercial property have to have a particular aesthetic. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we need to keep that lake community feel. And that, I just think that is so important. I appreciate your time. Thank you. I'll go wait.
Thank you for your comments. Casey, do you want to address the pass-through to taxpayers, that comment?
Sure. Yeah, first I'll just say that the only parkland the city received in the Jeffers Pond development is the actual parks that are still parks. That property was not given to the city of Prior Lake. It was developed by the Jeffers Foundation in different stages of residential and commercial development. So again, city's only involvement is maintaining the park. There is zero cost for the taxpayer for this project. So the developer pays for every utility, every street, curb, the sod, the trees, the street signs, street lights, everything. The city will only accept the project once all of that's done and it's tested at the completion.
Thank you. Our next guest, please state your name and address for the record.
Jamie Pockert, 14525 Surrey Lane. I'm going to start calling my house the war zone area because I am literally on the corner of Carriage and Surrey. I've been through construction before, and it was with a water treatment plant. And there were 15 residents that were all at the meeting, and the city said, we're not going to have any lighting, we're not going to have any fencing, you're never going to know it's there. Guess what? We knew it was there because I battled them. And I had my two kids at the time were like maybe 4 and 6, and they had a water blow-off valve. And every 2 hours or 4 hours, this thing would make, think of somebody sitting in your living room hitting the air brakes. That's what it sounded like. So construction noise, I know it's going to happen, but my question is where's the traffic going to go for the construction? Because the way I look at it is they're not going to build the street right away from Fountain to Surrey, so that's not going to be anything. So that means all this traffic's going to be coming in on Surrey Lane. And the second question is the hours of operation, because is it going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or is it going to be sun up to sundown? Because when I had to deal with the water treatment plant, there was traffic all the way up till 9, 10 o'clock at night going in and out of there hauling stuff. So, and then my third thing, obviously the traffic study. I think your traffic study is skewed too. Saturday, you guys need to sit. I will invite all the city council down to sit in my side yard. I will bring you beverages, refreshments. I'll even cook you food just to watch.
What kind of beverages?
Whatever you want. It can't be this Saturday, though. I have a graduation party. But I will invite you guys down to just sit there for 2 hours or even an hour, and the amount of boat traffic and people going by. You know, they don't have to go down to 42 anymore. They just gotta, we can just cut through up Carriage Hills and stuff. And then Thursday nights, there's ball games. So having a traffic study from 4:30 in the afternoon to 6 o'clock, 6:30, that's nothing. That's 2 hours. I mean, come when it's busy. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I can count 20 boats going by within 15 minutes because it's so easy now to go that way. And 20 boats coming back. Same thing with Pike Lake. They'll come out on Pike Lake too. I mean, I was coming home from work, turned on Pike Lake. Here's 3 trucks one with a boat, one with jet skis, one with another boat. So, I mean, I would like to see another traffic study done, but not like during the week. Like, do a full weekend, like Saturday from 7 a.m. to Sunday at 5 o'clock when everybody's getting off the lake. Or even a better one, 4th of July weekend when everybody's trying to get off the lake. That would be a great one, because I'll tell you, that traffic's horrible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I can respond to a couple of those. So the construction schedule, the city code allows construction from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday and 8 to 5 on Saturday. And then the traffic study was, I'm guessing, not done over a weekend. It was completed, but there was counters out for 2 days. It wasn't just counting traffic from 4 to 4:30. So a 48-hour period, 4 to 4:30 was the peak traffic time. So, but I'm assuming it was probably a weekday traffic study.
Yep. Casey, do you have any, or Nick, do you have any sense of what the cost to the city would be if we augmented, not did away with, but augmented the existing traffic impact study and kept those counters out for 5 days versus 2?
For the simple data we collect as the city, to have them out for 5 days is minimal. Now, I don't recall how long Alliant had their counters out for this traffic study. Usually it's a longer period of time, usually around a week, maybe even 2 weeks, and then they compile the data. So they want those weekends, they want multiple weekends. They're quite thorough in the numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ralph Wagner. I have one more question I need to ask. Has this already been approved? Is this a done deal that's going to happen?
No. That's why we're having the public hearing.
This is a public hearing, so it's not approved. I'm hearing this timeline about early spring, we want to get going early spring or have the first house in. And that's really kind of confusing. It sounds like it's a done deal, but it's not.
I didn't quite understand.
It's not approved.
This has not been formally approved.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else want to address the council, the commission, not the city council? This goes on to the city council. Okay, I'll ask the developer and maybe someone from, he's got it? Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, let me take a shot at some of these answers. Casey and Nick might have some additional answers.
Yep. Do you need some water before you begin?
You can tell, huh? I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you. First question was, are we going to have homeowners associations? Yes, we will have one homeowners association for the townhome neighborhood. We will also have a separate homeowners association for the twin homes. Different levels of service there. Possibly might be combined, but they're a little separate. We haven't decided yet whether we're going to have a homeowners association for the single family neighborhoods. That really depends on entrance monuments and other shared things, so that's yet to be determined. The timing of the homes. The timeline I gave, yes, was aggressive and assumed that we would be approved, but that is not a done deal. So if things go well, our approvals would happen by the City Council on June 23rd. Then it all goes to the Met Council for an unknown amount of time because they have no requirements for timelines. That could be 30 days, 60 days. If they approve it, then at that point in time, we would close on the property and try to start construction right away. It's a lot of work to be done. We wouldn't get it all done in 1 year. But yes, the goal would be to be able to get enough construction work done this year to be able to open some model homes in, say, January of 2027 and start selling homes about that time. And that's why I said April to June or whatever months I said there, that range is because we start selling homes in January or February in the model homes. People start buying homes and then they go through their choices of many things and we start building the homes. So somewhere in the summer of 2027 would be the earliest that we would see people living in the neighborhood. Another question was about how the traffic study showed any impacts to Coachman Lane. I don't have that kind of answer tonight. I would suggest that that person email Nick if you don't mind. If you want to refer her to me, that's fine too, but we have the traffic study, and deep in the back are some detailed appendices where you can find those answers. There was a question about what was included in the traffic study, and it included the residential portion of, so this entire application, plus the business office park, because we knew that that may generate a fair amount of traffic. So that was really a legitimate thing to take a look at. In the background, we had what's called a background generation growth rate. So that accounts for the apartment building and other things. So we had a growth rate of 1% per year, adding on each year. And all of this was not just willy-nilly decided by us. You know, we worked with the city staff, we worked with the county. In fact, we had to go through a few iterations with the county in terms of exactly what they wanted studied. And we did exactly as they asked. This is kind of counterintuitive, but I hear a lot of comments that are very logical, talking about why don't we make some transportation improvements now before it becomes dangerous? And that is a very logical comment, but that is not how the transportation industry works. I think they found that decades ago, that if it was politicized, that every intersection would have a stop sign and a signal, and we'd have a lot of slower speeds out there, so it would kind of gridlock our traffic. So what they determined is they use math. And they look at crashes, they look at, as Nick said earlier, how long people wait to take a turn in a turn lane. And all of these things are called warrants. And when finally an intersection or a street meets warrants, then improvements must be done. And what's unseen is MnDOT, the counties, they build their roads and intersections for a temporary time period, and they know that someday they're going to need more improvements. They wait until it's needed before they actually spend that money. So it is kind of counterintuitive, but it's kind of like things have to get worse before they can get better. And that's a terrible thing, I know, to say to the public, because it sounds awful, but that's how the traffic industry works. And it's very, very logical, it's very math-oriented, and it's very consistent across the country that way, so that we don't spend a lot of money on things before they're actually needed. There was another question about why we remove all the trees, and that one bothers me, because I agree. This is not blaming the city, but there are many regulations that we have to satisfy. And in satisfying those, we can't have streets that go with the existing hills and go very steep, because we have winters with slick roads, so we have to flatten those roads out so it's safer. Or we have to have yards that drain at certain grades so that everything drains. If we drive through a Minnetonka today, it looks fantastic because they didn't have any of those engineering regulations. But you know, I think we learned over the decades that there's a cost for that. And those costs are drainage problems and sometimes other problems. So the bottom line is we can't save many trees in our neighborhoods because we have to follow all these regulations. And I'm not complaining. Those regulations do have logic and they lead to less problems. So it's a trade-off that society has made. Other people other than me can make decisions to change those assumptions, but that's what we have decided. Are the trees going to be removed from the outlots? We're not touching the outlot that is along Prior Lake. The outlot that is the business office park north of Fountain, to a certain degree, this neighborhood has been largely decided in terms of where the streets go and everything else, because there are intersections on all sides of it that we just have to connect to. So it's kind of fixed. My point is, Fountain Lane Drive has to connect to the existing intersections both on the east and the west side, and therefore it has to go right through the wetland. As part of that, we're going to damage the wetland that's north of Fountain. So whether we fill it now and whether there's trees there, I don't know. My point is there's a small amount of work we'll be doing on the business office park area to remove the home and buildings for the Veerlings, but also for filling that wetland. Drainage. There's a lot of comments about drainage. I could talk for a long time about all of those. The good news is Minnesota has strong stormwater regulations, and those are as simple as this: pre-development and post-development. When you get to post-development, the rate of flow that flows off the property in a certain direction cannot be increased post-development. And that's really with the advent of ponds that hold the water back so that gradually releases, so that we don't release water at a greater rate. And case law throughout the state over the last 5-6 decades has kind of settled on this is reasonable. You know, if your water drains on somebody's property and you don't make it worse, then everything's good. So in this case, there's a couple things. We heard about drainage. Mr. Veerling talked about drainage kind of up in the northeast corner going into the townhome area. In that area, we're actually reducing the drainage area by 90% and the amount of actual flow by 85%. So we're making a lot of improvements in that area. From the wetland, the large wetland going north to Pike Lake, again, we must follow the regulations. So again, our peak flows that go out of that wetland will be less than is currently going out of that wetland. And again, that's done through the use of things like our ponds that hold the water back, and also these structures that are in the pond that release the water. They have little holes in them, outlet control structures, so that we control exactly how much water is released from that wetland. So all of those things really lead to compliance with what our strong stormwater regulations are throughout the state that have worked really well over the last 50 years. Can't read my writing here, sorry. Oh, I do see a note that the rate of flow coming from the large wetland going north is now about 15 cubic feet per second. It will be reduced to 3. So that's going to be cut to 20% of what it is now. And again, it's not magic, and it's the use of ponds and these outlet control structures that allow us to do that. Why did we not have low-density residential along Carriage Hills Parkway? Yeah, this is a complicated answer. These aren't rules, but here's some guidelines we oftentimes use. When you see a road that's very busy, like 21, and Carriage Hills Parkway is not quite as busy, but still a fairly busy road, we typically try to put some of the more intensive uses in those sorts of intersections. It's not a rule. It doesn't mean you can't have a $1 million home at that kind of intersection, and it might sell, and it might, people might be happy living there. But overall, the people who are buying the more expensive homes are a little less tolerant of, living in a situation like that. So the townhome buyers are a little more tolerant. So there's a logic to it. There's also this kind of gradation. I said earlier, we're kind of stuck really with where the intersections would be and how access to the site would occur. We already had intersections preset on Carriage Hills Parkway. They're already built. So we knew where we had to connect. And Fountain Hills Drive, same thing. So my point is, we knew that Surrey would be a north-south collector. It was shown on the city's comprehensive plan. It was a given. That's a natural divider between different types of housing. So we use that as a natural divider. It ends up being that Fountain is also going to be a natural divider between the business office park on the north side and residential on the south side. So taking into account all those factors, it just kind of came together with those sorts of layouts. When will all the homes be built? 2030, 2031, if the market continues exactly as it is today? It never does. It might be better, it might be worse, but that's roughly the outlook right now. How did we come up with the mix?
I'm going to start this morning with a short video, and I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to get that started, and then we'll jump into our PowerPoint presentation.
Happy to begin this State of the City address with the announcement that the Cora Apartments project is finally under construction. Hi, my name is Jason Waddell, and I'm the Prior Lake manager. For years and years, I've been talking about this project next door to City Hall starting, and it's finally here. The two houses that have been removed, and this $30 million project is now starting to come out of the ground. The Cora Apartments will bring 105 new market rate apartments to the downtown area. Each unit will have underground parking with 135 stalls, which equates to 1 stall per bedroom, and that is more than any of the other.
Those answers better than I do that will figure those things out. However, usually in our development agreement, those things are discussed, if not written in the development agreement, and they're pretty standard. I mean, we do our best to be safe and to coordinate with the county and the city on what is the best construction access so that we don't bother folks. And that really, I think, covers everything that I had written down.
I was kind of following along. Paul, thank you for the responses. There was a couple. So the townhomes, are they 2 stories or 3? And then there was a question on, I don't expect you to know the density of Trillium Cove, but I don't have it. I could figure it out, but the density of the townhome area of that compared to this?
Thank you, Casey. Yes, it's true. The townhomes we built in Trillium Cove are 3-story. The townhomes we plan to build in Marlow Ridge are 2-story. They're different. I won't go into the details why, but they are different. They look different. They feel different. They feel more like a single-family home than a townhome, and that tends to appeal to a wider variety of people. So they won't be nearly as tall. They'll be the same rough height as a 2-story home. And the last question, density, you know, rough napkin type stuff. Densities of the 3-story townhome might be 10 to 12 units per acre, and of this 2-story townhome are more like 7 or 8 units per acre.
Public hearing is still open. Before I officially close the public hearing, commissioners, are there any lingering thoughts or questions for the applicant? Let's start with Commissioner Nicholson.
No questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmokel.
No questions.
Commissioner Yurko.
No, no questions.
Commissioner.
I do have one question, and I just can't tell from the visual that's up. I mean, the point that was brought up before about the parking for the townhomes, where will people park when they have guests? I don't, unless there's room on the streets, but maybe I just can't tell from the visual.
Chair, Planning Commission, usually when you see a townhome neighborhood, they are private streets, 24-foot wide, there's not room for parking, and there are perpendicular stalls for parking. we won't get into the details, but one of your rules, policies changed that made us choose to have public streets, so that these streets are wide enough to have people park on one side of the street.
With the, I was just going to tag on to your question, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
With the driveways being so close, I don't know of any development that we have where we have 8 to 10 in a row sets of townhomes that are 4 to 6 units in a building, I'll call it. In our community, I was looking at some trying to find, we've got some where they're in rows of 4, they're in rows of sets of 4, sets of 6 buildings, but this run along Carriage Hills is quite extensive. And so with those driveways all coming off and them being so close together, where on the street will there be room for any cars to park?
We can prepare a plan that shows what those are and count them up, if that would be helpful. I guess.
Yeah, the closest one is over off of Franklin Trail and 21 and 13 that I could find, where there's this density like this. Now those are, I think, 3-story units over there, but I know they have on every street there's maybe 2 to 3 sets of bundles of guest parking, a couple parking stalls, 2 to 3 kind of paired up at a time. But that's where I was with the parking one. It's little concerning for me.
I would be happy to have a conversation with planning and engineering staff to figure out if we have enough parking, if they want to go to private streets where there's perpendicular parking, or if we want to add some perpendicular parking to city streets. There are, 3 options right there that we could really talk about, and whatever you guys want, we'd go with.
Sorry.
You're fine. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I just heard the comments about, obviously, there's limited parking across the street for the park, and so I'm like, where would people park? Because I don't see any space really in between these buildings. You maybe get a couple cars here and there, but, so yeah, that's the only comment I have. Thank you.
That's worth a closer look. I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for the good question and the response. Casey or Nick offhand, do we have any credible comparables with regard to that parking concern?
I wasn't prepared for that question. We'd have to look.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Something you guys can look into. I have no questions. Commissioner Fenstermacher?
I have no other questions either.
Commissioner Rook?
No questions.
All right. I will, thank you. It is 9:07. I'll entertain a motion and a second to close the public hearing at 9:07. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioners Rook and Tennyson, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Staff, can we put up the action step, please? All right, so we've concluded the public hearing. We'll move to commissioner comments, and then I'll entertain a motion in a second. Commissioner Nicholson, any lingering questions, comments?
Yeah, so my only comment at this point would be there are a lot of issues brought up around traffic and safety, and I am not sure that what I saw in the plan really maybe addressed some of those questions, some of those issues. And living in that area, I share some of those concerns and see some of the real world impacts. So I would like to see a little bit of additional work done on the traffic studies and the traffic flows.
Great. Commissioner Schmokel?
I'm going to kind of piggyback on that too, and I think it goes beyond Marlow. Right? We're kind of putting a lot on Marlow when it's a broader problem, but my family lives down on the Wagon Bridge area, so I know that the problem today becomes a bigger problem down line. So I feel like I feel a responsibility to say we need to do something so that we don't create problems elsewhere. And I don't know what that something is, but I kind of echo that. And then the second one and last thing I have is about the wetland area and the basin plan. I'm not a watershed expert, but I am a retired engineer, and I've looked at a lot of design documents. And I'm really very heartened, and I feel very good about the materials I saw. Even though I don't know all the details, I think they're very knowledgeable about what they're doing with the city staff. I think you guys are on it. I trust that you're going to do it well. Based on what I see. So my gut is telling me that there's a good knowledgeable oversight on that watershed basement.
Thank you, Commissioner Yurko.
Yeah, I have some similar to my colleagues, some concern over the combination of the density paired with the safety and traffic as they all start to overlay on top of one another that I don't know is quite resolved yet, to then look at a plan that is proposing an increase of density that is beyond what our current zoning allows, zoning requirements. And so I think that's where it all kind of starts to come to a head for me, with those pieces all overlaying, flowing in, and to look at that and look at what's being proposed even for the townhome section with that increased medium density, which is bringing probably the larger volume of density in terms of people to this development. So as those things start to all stack and layer up, that's where my questions are really lying. I have less concerns over what's being proposed for the single family, the 2 levels that are over in that area, but the density issues with that safety and traffic, pedestrians.
So comments well taken. I want to toss it to staff again, because my study of the notes in your report suggested or reflects that the units per acre are within and aligned with and comport with the guidelines. Am I wrong?
You're correct, Commissioner. So the overall density of this development is 3.75 units per acre. That's a low density range of 2.5 to 4. The medium density area is 4.7. The low density is around 2.6. So I understand where the commission's going. I don't think we have an option. This property is already guided for medium density and business park. The Planning Commission and City Council don't have the option of saying this is a low density only amendment. The Metropolitan Council would not approve that. There's a certain floor that has to be hit. Otherwise, we're just going to have to stick with our current guidance and wait for a business park property to come in and develop.
Can I ask one clarifying question with that?
Sure.
The wetland area is a large portion of this, and there was a question related to density with that. When it comes to the guide requirements and Met Council requirements, that has to be included, correct?
The wetlands are not included.
They're not included.
The total acreage of this development is 87.7 roughly. It's about 69 net acres with the wetland and the county right-of-ways and things like that excluded.
So without that in there, it's meeting the density requirements as you have laid out.
Correct. Yep. If the wetland was included, we would be 262 units over 87 acres, and the density number would be even lower.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Tennyson?
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, thanks to the city staff for the incredible report, and everybody here that's going to give them their commentary. It's been very helpful to kind of hear the feedback, and the Verling family for their feedback. Really good to kind of hear some of the history. I think for me, this is, I've lived in this community for about 15 years. I've driven by this plot of land for 15 years. I think that the thing that's hard for me is losing the 10 acres of business use land. However, having that said, here in the commentary about this is Plan M, and multiple plans have come before this, and it's 11 years in the making. you know, at some point, we do have to kind of make a decision to move on if we've got other property that we can turn into commercial property. I concur wholeheartedly with the traffic and situation. I'm on that road quite a bit. People are driving way faster than 35 miles an hour. I've seen it myself. So, I mean, I do think we need to do something there and think about that a little bit more, and appreciate the feedback on and taking the feedback on the parking with the townhomes, because I think we've got to figure something out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to echo, I have a big circle around some of my scribbling here, and I'll just read to you what it says. It says traffic, and then I have bullets underneath that: safety, calming, signage, pedestrian impacts, and flow, right? So the traffic impact study, I did a lot of homework over the weekend and learned more than I care to about, you know, impacts and density and flow and all of those things. I'm not prepared to take a full-time job doing that, but it's really informative. And so where I'm landing is that, yes, this has been a long time coming. I moved here in 2002, and my realtor at the time said, are you going to live by the farm? And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, the Veerling property. So, I mean, the Veerling property is well renowned throughout the Twin Cities, and I'm glad that we're moving forward and getting close. But I wouldn't want the traffic issues to exacerbate or perpetuate the broader conditions that are happening, right? And so if there's a way for the applicant to work with staff and bring back to us in a fairly, you know, timely manner some optionality, some things that we can look at. I'm in full support of moving this forward, but I think we have to address some of those things that were brought up before. My smaller bubble that I wrote was anticipate challenges and concerns and expedite solutions. That's just my note to myself, right? So what can we reasonably and timely anticipate? We've got a lot of information here. And then how can we timely execute on some solutions? So I'm in support of what we've seen tonight, and happy to move it on to the council once we have you know, address some of those hanging chads just a little bit more. Commissioner Finstamacher?
Thank you. I applaud everybody with all the comments. I think it's been mentioned a few different times. This is excellent. This is the way this should work. Very long, but that's the way it's supposed to work, right? So I love it, honestly. A lot of comments, a lot of discussion back and forth. I come back from an engineering background myself, so I have a lot of familiarity when it comes to developments and working with city requirements and whatnot. I work in city government for a different city. When I think about traffic analysis and the models, I know there's some question whether or not models are correct. I agree. There's maybe times where models may not be right, but it's the best we have. It allows us to make sure that those models ensure objectivity instead of subjectivity, feelings, making sure that we are approaching this in a manner that is fair to as many people as we can. I know fair is can be a bad word in some cases, but it's objective. That's the best way we can use it. So the traffic, I feel like a lot of these concerns are valid. I think it's more so on everything outside of this development. And I don't know that it's necessarily fair to put it on this development. That's the gist of it. Now, being in Minnesota and knowing all of our requirements, stormwater is one of the best things out of this because of what Minnesota has, and we do have some really good requirements in place. I think that's the most positive thing that comes out of this development is the improvements to the wetland. It is phenomenal. That's a great asset to come out of this development. The other thing with tree replacement, knowing Prior Lake's requirements and knowing some of the neighboring communities and other developers or other developments, other communities in the metro, we have one of the best. I've always known that. I sure hope it still is the case. It was always marked as the prime model. We got the best out of this, is what I've always trusted our tree replacement policy when it comes to that. So that's a great thing too. When it comes to the other benefits coming out of this, Fountain Hills is definitely one of the biggest ones as well. This opens up a lot of commercial industrial that is prime. This is going to be really beneficial for our community to get that commercial going. And yes, we're losing 10 acres, but I feel like if we were to carve out that section, as Casey's already mentioned, who knows if that ever will build, because it's so hard to build when it comes to the elevation requirements there. So it's kind of sucks to lose 10 acres, but yet it's important to get something moving so that we can get additional commercial and reduce the tax burden on our community. So all those pieces, I do have one thing that's still a hang up to me, is the parking. And I think it was already recognized as there's probably some additional information going to come back to recognize what kind of parking requirements or impacts there may be, so we can make sure that that's not going to spill out. That's the main thing, main concern I have at this point. So
thank you, Commissioner Rook.
Obviously, as stated, a lot of work done by staff. Appreciate all of the comments from the public. Ultimately, we have a long storied piece of property that's been in the area for a very long time, and a developer who's been willing to buy it and willing to develop it. I think we need to be grounded in maybe what the ask is of us, which is ultimately the amendment of the use map, the amendment of the zoning map, the easement vacation, and the preliminary planned unit development. I think we can all appreciate that safety and traffic are of the utmost importance, and I think we need to likely reflect on what the right venue is for probably for that discussion. But again, thank you to all those involved that have provided, I think, a litany of information on this topic.
Maybe it's because it's 9:21, but I feel like we should have a little bit more conversation. I'm wondering, I need everyone's help up here, just to kind of settle things in my mind. Is it prudent and reasonable to consider a motion and a second on items or sub-items 1, 2, 3, and 4, break those out, but on number 5, the preliminary plat for Malo Ridge, second edition, conditioned upon developer addressing staff comments, is it prudent to entertain a motion a second on items 1 through 4 and either condition approval or table sub-item number 5 until we have additional feedback from the outcome of the next conversation between staff and the developer? Anybody want to just share your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Commissioner Rook. Is this the right venue to talk about broader traffic issues? I mean, whether it was even if we got the PUD just perfect and we came up with this magical solution that everyone was good with, we'd still have cars. And so I don't think the traffic problem's going away. And I'm going to echo Commissioner Rook. What is the right venue? Because I think it's a broader problem, and I don't know that it really belongs on this developer. Even if we got it perfect, we'd still have this issue with us. I don't know that it's our place to solve a bigger, broader traffic problem.
I'll take a response and Nick can chime in. So I agree. What I'm hearing is we're concerned with traffic. We need to address that. Well, this is the intersection of a county highway. We as city can't go to Scott County, even if we've got it funded, and say we're putting in an intersection. I don't know any changes that could be made to this development to significantly change the traffic forecasts or the projections if they lost 15 or 20 units, which may be the max. So we need this development. Our land use plan includes medium density, it includes low density, it includes business office park. The Met Council will likely be supportive of losing business office park for a medium density, but my gut says we're on the border. This is not a very dense neighborhood, even though it's more dense than we've done in the past. If units start going away, it's pretty likely that Met Council would not approve it, even if it got through our Planning Commission and City Council. So I'm not sure. I understand the Planning Commission comments. It's very thoughtful comments, especially in response to hearing them from the public, but I don't know how we solve a safety issue at the intersections with this development.
Other commissioner comments? Thank you, Casey. Commissioner Tennyson?
Thank you for that. I think, what about the pedestrian lights on Carriage Hills or more parking? I mean, is that, something that we could consider? I mean, the parking obviously is separate from the pedestrian lights, but I do like the suggestion of pedestrian lights to help maybe slow down traffic.
When you say pedestrian lights, you mean a crossing?
A crossing with actual
Like a
lights, where you hit
flashing.
and then the lights turn on.
Yep. That's something, again, we need data to drive that decision. We don't like to just throw them in to throw them in. I think something that would be more pertinent and beneficial would be possibly a permanent speed feedback sign along that stretch that's always there reading your speed. I think that would have more impact than a flashing crossing to start, but that's just a thought and something we would have to discuss.
Well, the speed does change. It's 30 at one point and 35 at another, so there is a little ambiguity. I've traveled it from 21 to Sand Point, and I know that the cars that go there, a lot of boat traffic, and it does get confusing. Is that something within the city's control to get some consistency or at least some permanent view of a good speed limit?
So speed limits are an interesting thing. We have, like you mentioned, we have two parts of Carriage Hills Road. We have, I'm going to say, the east of the roundabout with the driveways that directly access Carriage Hills. That's a statutory 30-mile-an-hour street. Everything west of the roundabout is 35 miles an hour, and it has no driveways. The city cannot simply assign a speed limit to a street outside of a statutory 30-mile-an-hour street or a 55-mile-an-hour street. What has to happen is MnDOT has to conduct a speed study, which will take probably 18 months, just knowing how backed up they are on that, and then they will assign a street or a speed to that street. Now, if we want it to be, say we wanted it to be, I don't know, 30, I'm assuming the 35 has been assigned by MnDOT, that could go in, that could tip in the other direction. They could say it's going to be a 40-mile-an-hour street and you can't do anything about it. So it can go one way or the other when MnDOT's involved and they're assigning a street speed limit.
So within this development, I think the one outstanding item that is addressed, it's not outside of the realm of this development, is especially the parking for the townhome portion of the community. I think that's one concern that has been raised by multiple individuals that is not, I don't know that it's able to be addressed, and with what I've seen come in front of my eyes thus far, I think there has to be another pass at that.
Casey, would it be, thank you, Commissioner, are you done? You okay? Is it prudent and reasonable to say as a condition that the developer and staff will exhaust all exploration to address the parking issue?
You could certainly do that, Commissioner, or, I mean, keep in mind that the Phase 1, so that's the overall PUD plan.
Yeah.
But the Phase 1 plat is just the 44 lots on the south side, which only includes, I think, 2 or 3 of the townhome unit building, I think 3 buildings.
Okay.
So the majority of that, the Planning Commission could make a condition to address on-street parking for the remainder prior to submitting any, preliminary or final, final plat applications for those units as well.
Yep. Commissioners, how does that sound to all of you? Sounds good? Okay, I think that's what we want to do. Okay, I'm going to, at 9:29, and the reason I'm not tired tonight, I was very tired 2 weeks ago. I had a great strong coffee earlier this evening, so I'm still ready to go. So I'll entertain a motion and a second that we recommend the City Council approval of Sub 1, an amendment to the 2040 City of Prior Lake Future Land Use Map Sub 2, an amendment to the official zoning map Sub 3, the easement vacation Sub 4, a preliminary planned unit development PUD plan for development to be known as Marlow Ridge, and Sub 5, a preliminary plat for Marlow Ridge Second Edition conditioned upon the developer addressing this particular staff comment regarding parking in Phase 1 per Director McCabe's suggestion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
May I add one, and the staff comments that are in the May 19th, 26 memorandum?
Of course. We have a motion and a comment. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Does anyone need a bio break? No, we're good? Okay. Let's move on to our next agenda item, 5A. This is old business, 17031 Sunset Avenue Northwest. This was a variance. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you'll remember from our last meeting, we were introduced to a variance request for 17031 Sunset Avenue Northwest. Applicant Ryan Biggett was requesting a variance to allow a 3.11% increase over the maximum 30% impervious surface for the construction of a new single-family home. You provided direction that you'd like to see some more reductions, so we ended up tabling that request at the meeting. State statute gives us a maximum of 60 days to act, either approve or deny a variance request. That 60-day deadline was coming up on June 13th. This was the last meeting in between, so we had prepared a resolution of denial since we had not heard or seen any revisions from the applicant. Friday after work, we did receive a signed waiver from the applicant extending that by an additional 60 days to August 12th, 2026. So we are planning on bringing that back. We'd recommend you table it here tonight.
So no action tonight from us?
Just a motion and a second to continue the tabled item to a future meeting.
To extend it.
Great. I'll entertain a motion, based on staff's comments, I'll entertain a motion and a second to extend this item to the date aforementioned in August.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll move on to item 5B. This is 4646 Lord Street Northeast. I understand from the commentary and the narrative in the report that significant progress was made on this, so we'll turn it over to staff for your comments.
Chair and Commission, thank you very much. Tonight we have a continuation of the discussion that we had from the previous meeting on 4646 Lord Street. Again, this is a request for a variance, and just to outline quickly, the request has changed since previous. The applicant, and we'll go just quickly over some details here as well, so we can remember what happened from last time. The applicant, Todd and Molly Phillips, are requesting a variance, this time for a rear yard variance to remove an existing home and garage and driveway for a new home. The request now has been amended so that it's just the rear yard setback, and it's been modified so that the request is for 40.27 feet as opposed to the original 36.5. Again, on May 18th, the Planning Commission met and had a hearing. That was tabled and continued for the next meeting, which is today. The Planning Commission directed the applicant to make changes to reduce the variance request. Again, this is located on Lord Street and the peninsula that jets out into Lower Prior Lake. A quick review of what was and what is now being proposed. Again, this is on a lot that is considered by our code to be substandard for the design specifications. Currently, the home sits with a 33-foot rear yard setback as provided by a variance. One of the things we look at, and it's really important for us to pay attention to, is impervious surface. It's one of our keystones. And again, this particular one looks to reduce that impervious surface. Originally 29.7, now it's down to 29.6, which is an improvement from even last time. The front yard setback was originally requested at 21.67. It's now being updated to 25 feet, so no request is now being made. The rear setback, again, the requirement is 50 feet based off of averaging. Previously, it was 36.5. The now updated request is for 40.27. Again, this is what it looks like graphically in the rear yard. Again, it's been pushed back to the 40.27. And again, no front yard required. Looking at some of the impervious surface requirements, the home has come down in size a bit. Again, some of this is doing with rearrangement of how the rear portion of the home sits and some of the design choices that the applicant has made. In addition, the front of the home has been realigned so that the kind of bent neck kind of jet out has now been consolidated and brought further towards the main home area. This has included a little bit larger driveway in order to make that extension so you can make the turn, but overall the site has gone down. And again, there were some questions about elevations. From the front, we measure from a building standpoint, we measure from the midpoint of truss. From the front elevation to midpoint of truss, it's 21.5 feet. And just for reference, that's 35-foot max is allowed. From the rear, it's 29.3 feet midpoint of truss. Again, 35 is max. Again, to go over quickly what the variance criteria is, it only should be permitted when in harmony with the general purpose of the code, when it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It can only be granted if there's a practical difficulty with the land in granting the variance, and that particular issue is not created by the landowner, and the economic considerations are not a practical difficulty. So analysis on this new proposal is that the overall impervious surface percentage is decreasing, and the rear request is less than what it was both now and what it was proposed before. Again, this is a first floor main living with a walkout. It's considered substandard as defined by our code. It was not, this particular condition was not created by the applicant and similar to conditions found in the east. Staff, based off this analysis, staff believes there are practical difficulties with this particular piece of land, and that this area predates platting in this area, so this would not normally be approved as a lot in today's standards. They are both decreasing impervious surface while also improving the site conditions. We have prepared a resolution of approval. Again, if you find there is a practical difficulty, and the motion is second to approve the variance is requested, and if not, then a vote of denial or denial should be proposed, and then we'll bring back a resolution for you. With that being said, we do recommend an approval for 9.27 feet of variance from the high or near water. They are required to submit an as-built survey that shall be recorded, and then all building permits shall be attained before commencement of construction. And we also have the applicant here today. We've already had our hearing, so it would just be an update and a decision by the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Commissioner Rook, any questions or comments?
I think the only comment is it appears the applicant made a best effort here to get this as close to what we think should be a resolution. And I think a couple of the neighbors wrote their letters of support as well for the proposed property, which I would be in support of as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Fenstermacher.
I too thank you for making some adjustments and getting it set back a little bit further. And I still agree that the pervious is the king here. So I really, slight change even better. It's I love it. So thank you.
Thank you. I too will be supporting the staff recommendation and just want to echo the thanks for diligently and timely working with staff and moving things along. Commissioner Tennyson.
Yeah, I appreciate the adjustments. I plan to support the parents.
And Commissioner Yurko.
No comments.
With that, I'll entertain, actually, I want to hear from everyone. Commissioner Schmokel.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate the adjustments. Thank you.
Commissioner Nicholson.
Echo previous comments.
Great. With that, I'll entertain a motion in a second to approve the state variance at 4646 Lord Street Northeast, subject to the listed conditions.
So move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioners Fenstermacher and Tennyson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, we'll move to new business. This is a planned unit development waiver for 4540 XXXX and XXXX Tower Street. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So what we have before you this evening is a request from Roars Companies to authorize staff to accept and process a planned unit development application. So Prior Lake City Code details the planned unit development criteria and application processes, and it requires a PUD to be 10 acres or more in total contiguous area, or the Planning Commission can grant a waiver from that and accept a PUD of less. But as staff, we cannot administratively accept a PUD under 10 acres without Planning Commission approval. The site in question is, actually I should go up to this site here, located just south of Tower Street off of Highway 13. So to the north is the Lunds and Byerly's strip mall, the post office just immediately north. There's some multifamily residential to the east, single family to the south. The concept plan, now I want to stress that this is a concept only plan. We have not, from a staff level or from the developer, landed on a preferred concept or something that we think works. The developer has provided multiple revisions based on staff comments. This is probably version 6 or 7. They're trying, from their interest to maximize the site. From the city, we're trying to, create lessen as much impact on the adjacent properties as we can. The site is a little unique in that it's low, but it slopes down to the west. So the developer was running into issues with the building walls being fairly tall on the western part of the property, but not the eastern. Kind of the same as the rear that's adjacent to the residential. So we're trying to find that good balance mix of between a 3 and a 4-story building to find a great product that works for the applicant, but also does not have a significant negative impact on the neighborhood. The property has 2 different land use guidances. We just talked about it, and I understand we said we haven't done this in 15 years, but this request would also be re-guiding and rezoning of a commercial property. They're proposing underground parking, roughly 2 stalls per unit. It'll be in that area. So the left side of the screen is the current 2040 land use plan showing the subject property highlighted here. The western 2 parcels, which are under contract and owned by a different entity, are retail general business. And then where the school district office building is actually guided for high density residential. What they would be requesting is re-guiding the future land use plan to identify all of the property as urban high-density residential, and then you see there is low density to the south. Similar request for zoning. Currently, this brown on the left side of your screen is high density. This is general commercial, C2. They are asking to rezone everything to R3 with a PUD overlay to do the multifamily project. A few exhibits of scaling. We won't get into this too much, but you can see the south elevation. So this would be like you're looking from the adjacent residential properties to the south, where they've got a 3-story building height on this, 4-story here, but you can see the pretty significant slope, the grade change there. So again, our minimum PUD requirements require a 10-acre or greater site, but it allows the Planning Commission to grant an exception. Some of the exception criteria for the 10-acre requirement is to submit a concept plan. The Planning Commission can decide based on the criteria whether to authorize staff to accept the application. So basically, you would be telling staff, yes, you can take an application, or no, you cannot. The proposed project will meet other criteria for the planned unit development. They are not able to assemble 10 acres, so they can't meet that requirement. Okay, so sorry, it's been a long night. The PUD requested zoning ordinance modifications and the potential public benefits aren't known. So at some point in the future, if this is approved, we'll bring in a PUD application saying developer is requesting X, Y, and Z, and in exchange, here's the public benefits that they're proposing. We're not at that point yet to have that information. And then also the Planning Commission tonight is encouraged, if you have any high-level thoughts on the concept plan, they're not binding comments. This is not a public hearing, but if you have anything off the cuff that you want to share with the developer, now would be a good time. So you're not approving a plan, you're not approving a concept plan. All you're doing is authorizing staff to accept the application. If you have any comments on the concept plan, please share. We as staff are in support of this request because the developer cannot assemble 10 or more acres. And then if approved, this would be brought back to you in a formal PUD public hearing package. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Casey. I'll start off. I think the only two wonderings I have, not concerns, wonderings would be just wanting us to be really, really thoughtful and deliberative, given the previous conversation, vis-a-vis commercial development versus residential. That would be my first wondering. And then the other one would be, what optionalities or options are there for trading off, again, the use, right? Where else could we make up for that potential loss of commercial? And then I'm not sure how I feel in this moment right now at 9:46 at night about 4 levels versus 3. So I would be in support of it, encouraging you all to take the application to explore that implications of that, the 4 versus 3 or the 3 versus 4, vice versa, on the elevation. So those are my thoughts. Commissioner Nicholson?
Yeah, I think the 4 versus 3, a couple of the other thoughts that I have are, and I'm not as familiar with this area, I know it generally, but it seems like, is this going to stick out like a sore thumb? I mean, that's the first thing that jumps out at me.
Commissioner, I wouldn't say so. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be a change. The school district office is probably, it's a 1-story or maybe a 1.5 stories. The site does sit low. If you drive by, the residential homes to the south probably sit about 10 feet higher. But on the east side of Toronto, there is several multifamily buildings in that area, so it would blend in that way.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Commissioner Schmokel?
Yeah, I guess just the loss of more commercial opportunity, particularly in there where we already have some established commercial opportunity. But if it hasn't had any nibbles, you know, you have to find some ways to make use of the land. I haven't thought about the height of the buildings when I look at it from the post office side, but I can understand that the folks behind might have other sentiments there, and you're abutting high density next to single family. That's probably going to create some challenges with acceptance. But yeah, I guess the main question is, do we, you know, sometimes when you wait, you gain something a little bit later. I know that this building was just recently decommissioned. If we were to wait, would we be able to capture a commercial entity? That's kind of where my question is, speculatively.
Thank you. Commissioner Yurko?
What's the height of the apartment building to the east on Toronto?
I believe it's a 3-story. I don't know the height offhand. And it would be, I'd have to check the plans if it's measured to.
That's got 3-story, and there's a parking underneath, if I recall correctly. There's like a garage door.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the roof is pitched or not.
It is.
Okay.
I can see it in my mind, but just for comparative, that would help me understand the, like, is this going to stick out if I could know what that is? And then has there been any exploration with the apartment, or these apartments going in, I assume, not condos, apartments?
There would be proposed as market rate rental apartments.
Rental apartments. Was there any exploration to do a mixed use base of that building to still hold a level of commercial here in our downtown, not really downtown, I guess, but the other side of town, commercial district? Because there'd be, I think, an opportunity there to maybe hold on to some of that commercial if there was more of a podium approach to the residential development to then have a combination.
Yep, we did have those conversations, and the applicant considered it. I don't know what level they considered it. Ultimately, they're not interested in commercial. They don't feel it would be very successful just because there's great highway visibility in this area for retail. But it was discussed, and they did look at it. They're not interested in pursuing it.
What would the zoning be for something like that?
For that zoning to work, it would likely be a PUD overlay district, which is probably what they would pursue anyway with the R3 district.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tennyson?
Yeah, I would say similar. I was going to say the mixed use question too, but I was wondering, it's a little far back. But the 2 lots that are to the left of the district office, have those been for sale for some period of time and they just haven't sold? Is that the story?
Correct. Yeah, I'm not sure how aggressively they were being marketed, but I know
Yeah.
they've been for sale for 5
Sure.
or 6 years.
Sure. Yeah, because I kind of concur of, like, that district office it's just vacating. I hate to give up more business land. It's just, like, it's hard. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Commissioner Fenstermacher?
I'm not really going to have any other further comments, but mixed use, I had the same question. Commercial, same question. I want to see as much as we can keep, but I'm also curious to know what we can gain out of this. So, my one question, I guess, that you could answer more is, it said right away for Toronto. Is there a need in Toronto? I don't claim to be OCD at all, but I do notice that Toronto goes or skews a little bit right there. Not that it bothers me at all, but is that why there's some need for?
Sorry. Yes, they're good eye. So right now, Toronto is within an easement on the school district property, but if this project were to move forward, they would dedicate necessary right-of-way, so it would become public right-of-way. There would be no plans to move or relocate Toronto, but it would just be located in public right-of-way, not an easement.
It'd be more so set up for maybe a reconstruction would fix whatever is there. Is that the purpose of it?
Correct. And right now, I know the trails on that area are right up on the back of curb, where with the redevelopment, we would want to create a green space and separate the trails from the streets, both north and and east, and we would look at all of those types of things.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rook?
Echo the sentiments that we heard already. I think the only additional comment would be, obviously, half this plot is already high-density residential, recognizing we're just, the ask is to capture the other half. So I would agree, we'd like some more space for commercial, and then, but given that this has largely been unused, obviously, I do think it actually fits with some of the neighboring multifamily that's adjacent to and kitty corner from this.
Thank you. Well, I'll entertain a motion and a second to allow city staff to accept and process an application for preliminary PUD review. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Commissioners Rook and Fenstermacher, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So the motion carries 3-2. Thank you, Commissioners. Next agenda item says adjournment, but I wanted to give Casey an opportunity to lift up formally just a brief conversation he and I had last week. We invited Jason Woodell, City Manager, too, and that was just wondering about scheduling a Planning Commission working session, just to get caught up on some things. We had sort of talked about inviting folks from the Watershed District to come and join us, too. It gives us a chance to talk about some of the items that we have approved, some of the things that are coming up, sort of tighten up any priorities or protocols that would help us do our work better. And in the case, I think you mentioned you were going to cook dinner for us that night, too, right?
I can, yeah.
Okay, for dinner.
And
So
see if the credit card works.
You want? Why don't you go ahead and?
Yeah, I think you covered it very well, Commissioner. So the idea would be to find a work session, but not necessarily before or after a Planning Commission meeting. So I'll send out some dates. I want to coordinate with the Watershed District a little bit more to make sure dates work for them. If you have anything in the meantime that you think would be a good topic for the Planning Commission work session, feel free to send that my way, and then the next few days you'll get an email from me with a few dates and options to see what works for everybody. One additional announcement is we are not right now currently planning to have a meeting on June 15th. We won't officially cancel that unless, to allow if something comes in last minute, but we'll send a formal cancellation likely later this week for that.
Thanks, Casey. And then before we go, I want to, just looking at the time, I want to make sure I thank Casey, Paul, Jake, Nick, and Sandy for being here, and our City Council liaison as well, too.
Same to the commissioners. Thank you. That was a long night. We appreciate it.
Sure. So I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn at 9:56 p.m. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you.